What would you do if you inherited not just a house, but a legacy, only to have your family try to take it all away? Iris Thompson had spent her life protecting her family's 80-year-old Victorian home, but after her parents' tragic death, the weight of the house along with its burdens fell entirely on her. Now, surrounded by a manipulative mother-in-law, a careless husband, and a demanding sister-in-law, Iris finds herself pushed to the breaking point. But in a dramatic twist, Iris discovers the power of her family's will, uncovering years of deceit and betrayal. Now it's time for Iris to reclaim what's hers, and she won't be silenced anymore. Stay tuned to see how Iris takes back control. My channel's struggling, so if you're intrigued, please comment 1 to help me out. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Subscribe to see how it ends, and I wish you all good health. Iris Thompson quietly climbed the worn stairs of her suburban Boston home, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The 80-year-old Victorian mansion was more than just a house to her, it was a reflection of her life. As she reached out to touch the familiar wooden banister she'd known since childhood, a wave of warmth washed over her. It was as if her parents were still here, their presence lingering in the very walls of this place. This 4,000-square-foot house held her memories, her history, and every part of her. Smoothing her soft brown hair, Iris adjusted her understated navy suit. At 32, her modest wardrobe had remained unchanged since her college days, even as a senior accountant earning $85,000 a year at a large firm. There was no need for anything more. The memories this house held were enough. The soft, golden light of the setting sun streaming through the stained glass windows always reminded her of her mother's gentle smile. In the spacious garden, the roses she had planted with her father still bloomed proudly, untouched by time. Spending holidays tending to the garden and preparing family recipes passed down from her mother had been her greatest joys. "I'm home." The cold air greeted her as she opened the front door, the warmth of the house now a distant memory. She had returned from another long day at the firm at 6:00 p.m., and the once cozy family home now felt different, empty in a way. The $20,000 annual property tax, once shared by her parents, now rested squarely on her shoulders. Her parents were gone lost in a tragic car accident 2 years ago, and now every burden of this home fell to her. "Iris, working late again?" Her mother-in-law, Willow, peered out from the sitting room, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that couldn't mask the subtle distaste she held. Dressed to perfection in her elegant clothes, her makeup flawless and expensive jewelry gleaming, Willow's life had remained untouched by hardship. A former private school teacher, she now filled her days with bridge club and social events, her life comfortably funded by the generous insurance money she had received when her husband died 10 years ago. "Welcome back," came the echoing voice of her sister-in-law, Dahlia, from the second floor. Dahlia, a self-proclaimed beauty influencer with 20,000 social media followers, lived a lavish lifestyle despite being unemployed. Her extravagant monthly expenses, $5,000, were covered by monthly allowances of $3,000 from her brother, Rowan. Her credit card debt had already ballooned to over $30,000. Iris said nothing, silently heading to the kitchen. Married for 3 years without children, the atmosphere of her home had changed drastically in the past 6 months since her mother-in-law and sister-in-law moved in. Rowan, her husband, a successful architect running his own design firm with an annual salary of over $150,000, had become more and more absorbed in real estate development, coming home later and later. Known for his stylish businessman persona, his love for expensive watches, and his gentlemanly demeanor, his affection for his sister had become painfully obvious to everyone around them, while his attitude toward Iris had grown increasingly cold. The change had been subtle at first, but now it was undeniable. As she prepared dinner, Iris checked her phone. There was a message from her real brother Oak, a partner at a major Boston law firm, as co-executor of their parents' will. Oak was also an expert in real estate law and earned over $300,000 annually. "How are you? I'll call this weekend." The brief message brought a small smile to Iris's lips. Her intelligent and reliable brother had been calling her without fail every week since their parents passed away. He made time for her, even in the midst of his hectic work schedule. His kindness was a comfort, a reminder that there was someone who cared for her. From the kitchen window, she gazed out at the rose garden. This house, now valued at $2 million on the market, had once been an iconic presence in this upscale neighborhood. But recently, a wave of redevelopment had begun to sweep through, with old mansions being replaced by newly built condominiums. Property values were rising rapidly, attracting the attention of developers, and the fate of her beloved home seemed uncertain. After finishing dinner preparations, Iris sat alone at the dining table. Her mother-in-law and sister-in-law said they would eat in their rooms. A message from Rowan indicated he would be late again tonight. The dining table, once filled with family smiles, now belonged to her alone. The next day, she would again quietly handle household chores alone and head to work at 7:30 a.m. Even on holidays, her days were consumed by housework. How long would this routine continue? Though known for her mild temperament and patience, lately a quiet anxiety had begun to grow in her heart. Outside the window, the evening breeze gently swayed the rose petals. Her parents' promise, "Protect this house," still echoed quietly in her heart. Tonight, it was both their will and a pledge with her brother. However, recently, keeping that promise seemed to be becoming increasingly difficult. At 8 a.m. on a holiday morning, Iris was already in the kitchen. Today was her mother-in-law, Willow's birthday. To prepare a meal worthy of this special day, she had carefully selected the finest ingredients from the market the day before. Changed into an elegant new navy dress, Iris efficiently worked in the large kitchen. In the dining room, illuminated by crystal chandeliers, fresh flower centerpieces were already arranged, and antique dishes were beautifully set out. Her mother-in-law's favorite roast beef turned out perfectly. Iris nodded with satisfaction as she checked. By herself, she had carefully chosen the menu, considering her mother-in-law's preferences. The appetizer was lobster bisque, followed by Wagyu roast beef, grilled seasonal vegetables, and a special order birthday cake. She had prepared an expensive Bordeaux wine. "Ah, I'm hungry!" Near noon, Dahlia appeared in the kitchen, dressed in the latest fashion with perfect makeup. She took a drink from the refrigerator and said, "But I'm meeting friends for tea later, so I'll just have something light." Iris said nothing in response. She was already used to their indifferent attitude toward the meals she had spent an entire day preparing. "Well, well, aren't you quite the cook?" Willow came to check on things, giving a condescending look as she said, "But is the seasoning right? Do you know my preferences?" Iris just smiled silently, despite having asked about and studied her mother-in-law's preferences countless times. At 6 p.m., the party began. Under the crystal chandelier, silver cutlery gleamed on the antique table. Rowan came directly from work. Willow was dressed up in a new dress, and Dahlia arrived after shopping with friends. As the family gathered one by one, and then that moment arrived. Oh, the chairs! Iris looked around the table and felt something was off. 6 chairs, 7 place settings. What? There are enough seats for everyone, right? Dahlia said with a malicious smile. Her eyes didn't even try to hide their obvious hostility. "Oh, Iris, why don't you eat in the kitchen? You must be busy, right?" Willow said with an elegant smile. Her voice dripped with cruel triumph. Rowan sat down silently. His expensive watch coldly reflected the chandelier light. The room's atmosphere froze. Relatives wore confused expressions. Dahlia looked satisfied. Willow maintained her artificial smile, and her husband maintained an attitude of indifference, as if it were someone else's problem. Iris slowly straightened her back. Known for her mild temperament, at this moment her eyes held a strong will. "It seems I'm not considered family. Please excuse me." Iris spoke quietly but firmly. There was a strange strength in her voice. Back in her room, Iris immediately picked up her mobile phone. She briefly explained the situation to her brother Oak, including everything that had happened up until now. "This might be my limit." "I understand. I'm coming right now. Wait for me." Her brother's voice mixed anger with his usual calmness. The party continued as usual, family members chatting, a celebratory mood, birthday cake preparations. No one imagined that this glamorous gathering would soon be greatly shaken. An hour and a half later, the doorbell rang. When Oak appeared, the party venue fell silent. In his hand, dressed in an expensive suit, he held what appeared to be a heavy briefcase full of documents. The crystal chandelier light coldly illuminated the documents in Oak's hands. Known as a lawyer, his expression lacked its usual calmness. From the moment he learned of his sister's betrayal, his eyes had harbored flames of anger. His experience handling numerous real estate lawsuits as a partner at a downtown law firm was about to be put to use protecting his sister. Documents were spread one after another across the antique table. Confidential agreements with real estate development companies, print emails, bank transaction records, and detailed architectural plans. They all clearly told the story of this family's betrayal. The mountain of documents cast shadows on the table like accumulated lies. First, this is a copy of the contract signed last month. Oak pulled out one document. The contract date was 1 month ago. The contract amount was $500,000. The planned construction was for a 20-unit luxury condominium. The planned selling price for each unit was $1.5 million. The total projected sales would reach $30 million. In this large-scale project, the secret agreement with the developers also promised priority orders for Rowan's design firm, revealing the full scope of the backdoor dealings. And this is the record of the contract payment already made. $500,000 has already been transferred from the developer to Rowan's personal account. The bank statement cast a dull light on the table. The transaction date, sender name, and amount were highlighted in red marker. Wait, I can explain. This was for operating funds for the office. Rowan's voice trembled. His hand with the expensive watch also shook slightly. His usual confident demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and his face turned ashen. Well, this was all done thinking of the family, for a new life suited to modern times. Willow tried to smooth things over, but her voice had already lost its strength. Her new dress now only highlighted her anxiety. Her ringed fingers trembled slightly, and her true age began to show through her perfect makeup. Big brother, what about the promised new apartment? My share? You promised me the corner unit on the 5th floor. Dahlia cried out in a panic. Her voice contained not a trace of her previous arrogance. Her hands trembling as they gripped her smartphone, her latest brand name bag tumbled to the floor. Dahlia, be quiet! Rowan tried to stop his sister, but it was already too late. The details of the secret agreement were being revealed one after another. The promise of the top floor of the new building to his sister's family. The promise of $20,000 in monthly living expenses to Willow, and the fact that everything had been advanced while hiding it from Iris was all exposed to the light of day. The secret agreement with the developers, the family profit distribution plan, and the circumstances of Iris's exclusion, everything is clear. Furthermore, it has been discovered that this plan had been in preparation for more than 6 months. Oak's voice grew even more severe. He placed a new stack of documents on the desk. Email histories, meeting minutes, bank account opening records. The evidence was perfectly assembled. However, you all made a critical oversight. He pulled out a new document. Their parents' will. This solemn document had already been certified by the court. This will contain special provisions. It's as if our parents had foreseen this kind of situation. At that moment, tears glistened in Iris's eyes. Her parents' final love was trying to protect her. First, there's a clause requiring Iris's consent. This means that any sale or renovation cannot be executed without Iris's written consent. Second, there's a sale restriction clause. This stipulates that the property cannot be sold for 20 years without special circumstances. Third, there are penalty provisions for violations. These include the possibility of criminal charges in addition to civil damages. And fourth, there's a requirement for joint management between siblings. Any important decisions regarding this house require agreement between Iris and myself. Oak slowly read out each clause. Each word changed the color of the faces of those who had plotted against them. The document, filled with legal terminology, completely shattered their schemes. These provisions have full legal binding power under real estate law. In case of violation, they could be subject to criminal charges. Particularly regarding the contract money already received, I judge there is an extremely high possibility it meets the constituent requirements for fraud. Surely not. You intend to press charges? My position in society. Willow's expression changed dramatically. The blood drained from the face of the woman who prided herself as a flower of society. Her elegant afternoons at twice-weekly bridge club would now come to an end. "Iris, can't we resolve this through discussion? We're husband and wife, aren't we?" Rowan pleaded toward his wife. However, his eyes were fixed not on his wife, but on his own uncertain future. It was clear his reputation as an architect would be ruined by this incident. "It's too late." Iris's voice was surprisingly calm. Her attachment to the house inherited from her parents and all her dedicated efforts until now. These gave her strength. Though known for her mild temperament and patience, her expression now held strong determination. "Preparations for the lawsuit are already complete. The defendants will be Rowan Thompson, Willow Thompson, Dahlia Thompson, and the development company," Oak continued. On the desk lay the complaint that had already been prepared. "We are also considering reporting this to the police, particularly regarding the flow of the contract money. Investigating authorities will show strong interest, including suspicions of money laundering. Asset preservation procedures have already begun." The room's atmosphere grew even heavier. The decorations for the birthday party now took on an ironic tone. "And finally, my last warning." Oak stood up. His presence was exactly that of a formidable lawyer. Every word from him, earning over $300,000 annually, carried weight. "If there are any further illegal acts, we will take immediate legal action. Please vacate this house within 24 hours. Your belongings will be sorted later under my supervision." Those words were the final blow. Willow collapsed into her chair, tears spilling from her eyes, and Dahlia broke down, her sobs filling the silence. Rowan, stunned and speechless, stood frozen in the middle of the room. This was how the glamorous birthday party had ended an evening that was meant to celebrate, now torn apart by betrayal. On the table, the untouched dishes remained. The Wagyu roast beef, lobster bisque, and grilled seasonal vegetables Iris had meticulously prepared. The special order birthday cake, with its intricate design, sat there, maintaining its beauty, never once being cut. The expensive Bordeaux wine sat undisturbed, its cork never popped. Iris stood by the window, gazing out at the rose garden, the one place she had fought so hard to protect left to her by her parents. The evening breeze gently caressed her cheek, almost as if her parents were whispering encouragement to her. As she stood there, her reflection in the glass looked stronger than it ever had before. It wasn't just the garden that had changed. Something inside her had shifted. This could be the beginning of a new life, she thought, and as that idea settled in, a small light of hope sparked within her heart. 2 weeks later, Iris sat across from Oak in a sleek, glass-walled conference room at a top Boston law firm. The morning sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the divorce papers spread across the desk. It was in that moment that she realized how drastically her life was shifting. "This is the final proposal for property division." Iris's voice was steadier now, stronger than it had been before. While her calm demeanor remained, it was clear that she had found a new core of resilience. The documents detailed a comprehensive list of assets, each line representing the life she had worked so hard to build, now being divided. "Rowan's betrayal seems to run deeper than we imagined," Oak said, his voice tight with anger as he pulled out a new stack of documents. These were not just financial statements, they contained evidence of Rowan's past fraudulent transactions. Padded billing on development projects, under-the-table deals with clients, and even suspected tax evasion. Behind his polished career as an architect lay a web of illegal acts. "We've confirmed it. Just in the past 3 years, we've found 5 fraudulent cases," Oak continued, his frustration clear. The evidence came flooding in. Complaint emails from clients, suspicious deposit records, falsified design drawings. All of it painted a portrait of Rowan's true character. Meanwhile, the neighborhood had undergone a significant transformation. The scandal had quickly become the hottest topic in the upscale residential area. Willow's social standing had plummeted, and she had quietly stopped attending the twice-weekly bridge club. The elegant afternoons she once enjoyed where the wine flowed and the gossip was sweet were now a thing of the past. "New facts about Willow's past have also come to light," Oak continued as he tapped away on his tablet. The screen displayed a newspaper article from 10 years ago, detailing suspicions about Willow's inheritance from her previous husband. questionable insurance payments, conflicts with family members, and numerous financial troubles. This was not the first time she had been involved in dubious dealings. Mother-in-law was always this kind of person. Iris's voice was tinged with resignation, more than sadness. The life of luxury in the apartment, the facade of a brilliant reputation in society, it had all been for show. The fallout had reached Rowan's architectural firm as well. Major clients canceled one after another, new projects stalled, and employees continued to resign. The office was in disarray, struggling to maintain operations. His expensive watch was pawned, and his sharp suits began to look increasingly worn and shabby. Brother, about Dahlia, too. Iris handed Oak additional materials, which detailed disturbing revelations. False advertising on social media, the sale of counterfeit brand items, and multiple credit card frauds. The glamorous lifestyle Dahlia broadcasted to her 20,000 followers was a complete fabrication. The total debt far exceeds our initial estimates, Oak stated matter-of-factly. Dahlia's financial troubles had spiraled to over $1 million, with maxed-out credit cards, loans from shady sources, and compensation demands from fraudulent sales. Bankruptcy was now inevitable. Local media had picked up the story, spreading like wildfire. Family collapse of prominent architect, real estate fraud shakes upscale neighborhood. Social media buzzed with commentary, and the architectural industry was awash with criticism. Rowan's work opportunities had all but disappeared. The court has issued an asset preservation order, Oak added, sliding another official document across the desk. Rowan's assets were now frozen, and their ability to travel abroad had been restricted. One thick document, one final blow to their lavish lifestyle. Meanwhile, things were beginning to turn for Iris. Her family's 80-year-old Victorian mansion had found new value. The procedures to designate it as a historical landmark were progressing, and the neighborhood had started recognizing it as a significant piece of local history. It's becoming a model case for house preservation efforts, Oak reported happily. Support from local residents was strong, and it was drawing interest from younger generations. The precious place inherited from their parents was gaining new brilliance in a different form. There's one more thing to report. Oak pulled out the final document, a restraining order against Rowan and the others. This would prevent them from approaching Iris or the house. It was an important step marking the beginning of a new life. Quiet tears glistened in Iris's eyes. However, these weren't signs of weakness, they were proof of her determination and strength for her new life. Outside the window, Boston streets were full of vitality. Iris stood up and took a deep breath. In her expression, illuminated by the morning sun, there was no more hesitation. She would forge ahead with her life using her own strength. That determination shone strongly in her eyes. Before leaving the conference room, Iris picked up a photograph from the desk, an old family photo with her parents. She nodded slightly at her parents' gently smiling faces. What true family bonds mean, she had already found that answer. 1 year later, spring sunlight streamed into the old Victorian house in suburban Boston. Iris was quietly reflecting on the past days while tending to the roses in the garden. This year there seemed to be more blooms than last year. She smiled while touching the rosebuds. The rose garden inherited from her parents had now become known as a local attraction. It wasn't uncommon for neighborhood children to visit for tours on holidays. "Iris, coffee's ready," a voice called from the kitchen. It was her new friend, Lily. They had met through the local Historical Building Preservation Society, and now she often visited the house on weekends. "Thank you. I'll be right there." Iris removed her gardening gloves and brushed off the soil. In one corner of the garden stood a newly installed bench, a feature she had suggested to make the community garden more inviting. The idea had come from her deep appreciation for spaces that connected people, something she had long felt the need to cultivate. "The atmosphere of this house is really wonderful," Lily said, offering a cup of coffee. A homemade lemon cake sat on the antique table on the terrace, another of Iris's efforts to revive her mother's cherished recipes. "Hey, how's that book idea coming along?" Lily asked, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. Iris smiled, her cheeks tinged with a touch of shyness. She had recently started writing a book about preserving and revitalizing historical homes, a project that filled her with a quiet passion. "It's progressing little by little. I want many people to understand the value of old houses." Iris replied, her words carrying a sense of certainty. Work had been going well too. She had recently been promoted to department head at the accounting firm, a position that came with a significant salary increase. But more than that, her approach to work had changed. Her previously reserved demeanor had faded, replaced by the confidence to make bold proposals, to speak her mind without hesitation. Her phone rang, displaying her brother's name. "Iris, do you have time this afternoon?" Oak's voice was warm, his usual kindness evident. The sibling bond had deepened even further this year. They made sure to have family dinners at least once a month, cherishing their time together to share the details of their lives. "Yes, of course. I have tea prepared today, too," Iris responded, a smile tugging at her lips. After hanging up, Iris looked up at the sky. Spring clouds drifted slowly, painting the sky with soft hues of white. Meanwhile, the former family members were walking their separate paths. Rowan had his architect's license temporarily suspended and was working as a design assistant in a small town, having left behind his expensive suits and watches to live a modest life. All his glamorous connections had faded away. Willow had been completely expelled from society and had sunk into depression. She gave up her luxury apartment and now lived quietly in a suburban nursing home. The weekend bridge club and elegant tea parties were distant memories. Dahlia had gone through bankruptcy proceedings and now worked as a clerk at an apparel store in a provincial city. Her social media accounts had been deleted and her 20,000 followers were long gone. The luxurious life had vanished like a dream, replaced by days spent chasing debt repayment. "But they're all still alive," Iris whispered softly. There was no bitterness in her voice anymore. She no longer felt hatred or anger. Life, she had learned, always brings its consequences. The house renovations were steadily progressing. Modern facilities were being carefully installed, but every effort was made to preserve the historical charm. The old wooden stairs were lovingly repaired, and specialists were restoring the stained glass. The house was breathing new life, gaining back its brilliance, just as Iris had. "In about an hour, the children will be here for their tour," Lily said, glancing at the clock. Recently, Iris's house had been chosen as a field trip destination for local elementary schools. It had become a new role teaching children the importance of history. "Thanks to Iris, this neighborhood has changed too," Lily added, a note of pride in her voice. Indeed, the streetscape was evolving. Uncontrolled redevelopment had subsided, and town planning now focused on preserving and incorporating old buildings. Iris's house had become a symbol of this movement, proof that history could coexist with the present. "Perhaps what changed was myself," Iris answered quietly. Her mild and modest personality remained, but now there was an inner strength she hadn't had before. The experience of protecting the house her parents had left her had given her the confidence to fight for what she believed in. As twilight descended, Iris spoke to her parents' photograph on the mantel. "I'm happy, Mom and Dad. In this house, I found a new form of family." The photograph smiled gently back at her, as if they, too, were proud of how far she had come. Outside the window, the spring breeze swayed the rose petals. Tomorrow, the warm sunlight would stream into the house once again. Iris stood by the window, watching the setting sun. This, she realized, might be true happiness. Though the form of family might change, what truly mattered always remained in the heart. Gratitude for her parents, who had helped her realize this truth, filled her heart, alongside a quiet hope for her new life. What do you do when everything you've worked for is suddenly under threat, when the family you've devoted yourself to turns its back on you? Do you keep trying to hold it together, or do you finally stand up and take control? Iris Thompson's story is one of quiet strength, a woman who had spent her life dedicated to her family, her home, and her responsibilities. But when betrayal from her husband, Rowan, and his family turned her world upside down, she did what many wouldn't. She fought back. Despite the years of sacrifice, the countless hours spent tending to the garden, preparing meals, and maintaining her parents' legacy, Iris's husband and his family took everything she'd worked for and tried to leave her with nothing. They thought she was weak, just a quiet accountant with no backbone. But they underestimated her. When her brother Oak came to her aid, the truth came to light. The backdoor dealings, the secret contracts, the lies they'd woven to steal from her. Iris didn't just stand by and let them destroy everything her parents had worked for. Instead, she exposed the betrayal, wielding the legal protection her parents had left her with, and took back control of her life. It wasn't just about protecting the house, it was about protecting herself, her worth, and her future. As Rowan, Willow, and Dahlia faced the consequences of their actions, Iris stood stronger than ever before, not just as a wife or daughter, but as a woman who had reclaimed her own power. So, what do you think? Should Iris have just walked away from the family, or was fighting back the only choice? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a way that felt impossible? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
The discovery hit me like a freight train, shattering the silence of the afternoon. As I sifted through the pile of neglected mail, my fingers trembled upon an envelope with the bold print, "Termination Notice." It was addressed to Nathan. My heart raced, confusion clouding my thoughts. Why would Nathan be terminated? The apartment felt colder, the air heavier, as if bracing for a storm. I dialed Nathan's number, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Julia, what's up? Calling in the middle of the day?" His voice, usually warm, now seemed distant, guarded. "Nathan, I found something odd in the mail. It's a termination notice." "What happened?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but panic laced my words. "I'm on a business trip in Seattle, Julia. Can't talk now. I'm in me later." The line went dead before I could protest. A business trip? The lie was blatant, almost insulting. Nathan hadn't mentioned any trips. My mind raced, piecing together his recent late nights and evasive answers. Something wasn't right. Needing clarity, I called my former boss, Linda. Her surprise at hearing my voice did little to ease my anxiety. "Julia Wells? This is unexpected. How can I help?" Linda's voice was warm but carried an undercurrent of confusion. "It's about Nathan. I found a termination notice, and he's saying he's on a business trip. I'm just trying to understand what's happening." My voice cracked, betraying my attempt at composure. There was a pause, heavy and loaded, before Linda responded. "Julia, you didn't know? Nathan was let go over a month ago. There was an incident. He leaked confidential information to a competitor." The room spun, and I struggled to breathe. Betrayal, sharp and bitter, coursed through me. "Leaked information? But why?" Linda sighed. "It's a mess, Julia. There were rumors about him and Eve, the new secretary. Both disappeared after the incident. It's believed she was involved with someone from the competitor's side. A setup, possibly." "Eve?" The name stung, a missing piece to a puzzle I hadn't realized I was assembling. Memories flashed, Nathan's late returns, his phone buzzing with messages he'd quickly hide. It all made sense now, a narrative of deceit I had been too blind to see. I need to think about this. Thank you, Linda." My voice was a whisper drowned out by the roaring in my ears. The call ended, leaving me adrift in a sea of betrayal. My marriage, built on love and trust, now lay in ruins, the foundation eroded by lies and infidelity. Nathan's voice echoed in my mind, a mocking reminder of the facade he had maintained. Anger bubbled within me, a fierce, burning need for retribution. Nathan and Eve, their deceit had not only shattered my trust, but jeopardized my future. They would not get away with this. I would make sure of it. As I stood in the silent apartment, a plan began to form. I would confront Nathan, demand answers, and then I would make them pay. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, and I intended to serve it frozen. With newfound resolve, I packed a bag. It was time to return to my family, to the home where love and honesty still held meaning. There I would heal, and there I would plot my next move. Nathan and Eve had awakened a fury within me, one that would not rest until justice was served. The drive back to my parents' house was a blur, the landscape passing by unnoticed. My thoughts were consumed by visions of confrontation and vindication. The once cherished memories of Nathan and me now soured, replaced by the bitter taste of betrayal. As the familiar outline of my parents' home came into view, a sense of determination settled over me. Nathan and Eve's deceit had marked the end of one chapter in my life, but it was also the beginning of another. One where I would reclaim my dignity and emerge stronger, no longer a victim of their treachery. The stage was set, the players aligned. It was time for the shadows of deceit to give way to the light of retribution. Returning to my family's home felt like stepping into a different world, one where the shadows of Nathan's betrayal couldn't reach. The warmth of the hearth and the familiar scent of wood shavings offered a balm to my bruised heart. Yet as I settled into the rhythm of my childhood home, the contrast between my past and present couldn't have been starker. My father, ever the stoic craftsman, noticed my turmoil. "Julia, you're home early. Is everything all right?" His voice, roughened by years of work, carried a note of concern. I forced a smile, the weight of my secret heavy on my shoulders. "Just needed a break from the city, Dad. It's nice to be back." He nodded, sensing the unspoken words between us. "Well, you're always welcome here. This home is your sanctuary." The dinner table was a tableau of familial warmth, a stark contrast to the cold lies Nathan had served. My mother's keen eyes watched me, her intuition sharp. "Julia, you've been quiet tonight. Is there something on your mind?" The floodgates opened. Under the soft glow of the dining room light, I spilled the bitter truth of Nathan's deceit, his affair with Eve, and the termination notice that had shattered my world. My brother Alex clenched his fists, the muscles in his jaw working. "That coward! To think he'd betray you like this, and with a secretary no less. He'll regret this, Julia. I'll make sure of it." "No, Alex," I interjected, my voice firm despite the turmoil within. "This is my battle. I'll handle Nathan and Eve. They'll pay for what they've done." The resolve in my family's eyes fortified my own. This betrayal would not define me. Nathan and Eve's deception would be met with a reckoning, one crafted with the precision and care my family poured into their work. In the days that followed, my sanctuary became a fortress of planning. The serene backdrop of the woods and the workshop's steady rhythm fueled my resolve. I began documenting everything, collecting evidence of Nathan's betrayal and his professional misconduct. Each piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin I was building for Nathan's deceit. One afternoon, as I sat in the workshop, surrounded by the comforting scent of cedar and maple, my phone rang. It was Nathan, his voice oozing false concern. "Julia, darling, why haven't you been answering my calls? I've been worried about you." The term of endearment, once sweet, now tasted like poison. "Worried? That's rich, Nathan. Or should I be asking Eve how concerned you really are?" There was a pause, a moment of silence where the facade cracked. "Julia, it's not what you think. Eve is just a colleague. Nothing more." I laughed, a sound sharp and cold. "Save your lies, Nathan. I know about the termination notice, the affair, everything. You're nothing but a coward who hides behind lies and deceit." Nathan's voice hardened, the mask slipping further. "You're overreacting, Julia. We can talk about this. Fix it." "Fix it?" My voice rose, fueled by anger and betrayal. "There's nothing left to fix. You've made your choice, and now you'll live with the consequences." I hung up, cutting off any retort he might have had. The finality of the act was liberating, a declaration of war against the man who had vowed to love and protect me. As the days turned into weeks, my resolve only strengthened. With my family's support, I began to rebuild, finding solace in the beauty of nature and the legacy of craftsmanship that had defined my lineage. My heart, though bruised, began to mend, fortified by the knowledge that retribution was within reach. Nathan and Eve's day of reckoning was coming. The echoes of their deceit would be drowned out by the whispers of retribution, a melody I intended to compose with meticulous care. The stage was set, and I was ready to take my stand. The next phase of my plan unfolded with a cold, deliberate precision. Armed with evidence of Nathan's duplicity and his affair with Eve, I sought legal counsel, ready to sever the ties that bound us in matrimony and deceit. My lawyer, a woman of sharp intellect and unwavering resolve, listened intently as I laid bare the extent of Nathan's betrayal. "As far as cases go, Julia, this one is as clear-cut as they come. We'll file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity and emotional distress. And rest assured, we'll make sure Nathan and his accomplice face the consequences of their actions," she assured me, her voice laced with a promise of retribution. Fueled by a mix of vindication and sorrow, I returned home, where my family awaited, their support unwavering. It was during these moments, surrounded by the comforting embrace of my family, that my resolve hardened. Nathan and Eve's deception would not go unpunished. The confrontation I had longed for came sooner than expected. Nathan, in a rare moment of courage or perhaps folly, arrived at my parents' doorstep, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Julia, we need to talk. I can explain everything," he began, stepping into the living room where my family and I stood united. "Explain? Explain how you lied, cheated, and risked our future for a fling?" My voice was calm, but beneath the surface, a storm raged. "It wasn't just a fling, Julia. Eve, she understands me in ways you never did," Nathan countered, his words slicing through the air like a knife. The room fell silent, the audacity of his admission hanging heavily between us. My brother Alex stepped forward, his anger barely contained. "You're pathetic, Nathan, to come here into our home and insult my sister with your vile excuses." "Enough," I interjected, my gaze locked on Nathan. "Your words mean nothing to me now. You've made your choice, and I've made mine. We're done, Nathan. I want a divorce, and I'll make sure everyone knows the kind of man you truly are." Nathan's facade crumbled, revealing a glimpse of the cowardice I had come to despise. "Julia, please, let's not make this messier than it needs to be. Think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it, Nathan. Every single day and night since I discovered your betrayal, you're the one who hasn't thought about the consequences of your actions. But you will. Oh, you will," I promised, my words icy. With that, Nathan left, his departure as unremarkable as his presence had become in my life. The door closing behind him felt symbolic, the final chapter of our shared life ending with a soft yet resounding click. In the days that followed, the legal proceedings began. Every step, from filing the divorce papers to serving Nathan with the notice, felt like shedding the weight of a life built on lies. The evidence of his infidelity and the repercussions of his professional misconduct painted a damning picture, one that left little room for sympathy. The community, once oblivious to Nathan's true nature, began to see him for what he was. His reputation, both personal and professional, unraveled, a fitting retribution for the pain he had caused. Eve, too, found herself ostracized, her role in Nathan's life, and their collective betrayal exposed for all to see. As the legal battle waged on, I found strength in my family's unwavering support and the work that grounded me. The workshop, with its chorus of hammers and saws, became my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in the beauty of creation and the simplicity of honest labor. Nathan and Eve's downfall was a slow, inevitable spiral, their actions catching up to them in a cascade of legal and social repercussions. The satisfaction of seeing justice served was bittersweet, a reminder of the cost of their betrayal. Yet amidst the chaos, I found peace. The veil of deceit had been lifted, revealing a path forward, one where I could rebuild my life on my terms, surrounded by the love and integrity of my family. The chapter of Nathan and Eve was closing, but mine was just beginning, a narrative of resilience, redemption, and ultimately renewal. In the weeks that followed Nathan's departure and the initiation of our legal battles, I immersed myself in the work and traditions of my family's craft. The workshop, with its timeless rhythm and the scent of fresh wood, became my solace and my strength. It was here, amid the shavings and the sculptures, that a plan began to take shape. A plan not just for revenge, but for reclaiming my life and legacy. My parents, sensing a change within me, offered their silent support, their love a constant amidst the turmoil. It was during one of our evening gatherings, the golden light of sunset filtering through the windows, that my father spoke up, his voice breaking the comfortable silence. "Julia, your mother and I have been talking. We know you're going through a lot, but we also see the strength in you. The workshop. It's always been a part of who we are, and we think it's time it became a part of your future, too." His words, simple yet profound, struck a chord within me. The workshop wasn't just a place of business. It was a legacy, a testament to the values and skills passed down through generations. And now it was offering me a path forward, a way to rebuild and to make Nathan and Eve's betrayal a distant memory. As I pondered my father's words, my brother Alex brought news that added fuel to my resolve. "I heard from a friend in town, Nathan and Eve. They're trying to spin the story, make it seem like you were the one at fault." Anger flared within me, hot and fierce. "They're trying to tarnish my name? After everything they've done?" Alex nodded, his own anger mirroring mine. "But they're not finding it easy. Seems your story, the truth, is already out there. People are siding with you, Julia. Nathan and Eve, they're the ones being shunned." The news was a balm to my wounded heart. The community's support was unexpected but deeply appreciated. It reinforced my determination to not only clear my name, but to ensure Nathan and Eve faced the full consequences of their actions. With renewed purpose, I threw myself into the workshop, learning the intricacies of our craft from my father and the other artisans. Each piece I worked on, each design I sketched, felt like a step away from my past and toward a new beginning. And as I worked, I planned. The evidence I had gathered against Nathan and Eve was damning, but I wanted more than just legal victory. I wanted to expose them for who they truly were, to show the world their deceit and their cowardice. My opportunity came sooner than expected. A local community event, a showcase of artisans and craftsmen from our area, was approaching. It was the perfect platform to not only promote our family's work, but to publicly reclaim my story. "I'm going to present at the event," I announced to my family one evening, a sense of purpose infusing my words. "It's time I stepped out of the shadows Nathan and Eve tried to cast over me." My family's approval was unanimous, their pride in my resilience a tangible thing. Preparations for the event began in earnest, with each of us contributing to the collection of pieces we would display. But my contribution would be more than just crafts. It would be my declaration of independence from Nathan's betrayal, a showcase of strength forged in the fires of adversity. The day of the event arrived, a buzz of excitement filling the air as the community gathered to celebrate local talent. My heart pounded with a mix of nerves and anticipation as I took my place behind our display, the woodwork gleaming under the soft lights. As I spoke to the attendees, explaining the history and the heart behind each piece, I felt a sense of empowerment. Nathan and Eve's attempt to undermine me had failed. Here, among my peers and my community, I stood tall, my reputation untarnished. And then, amidst the crowd, I saw them. Nathan and Eve, their expressions a mix of surprise and unease as they realized the support surrounding me. The moment our eyes met, I knew. The battle may have been long and painful, but the victory was mine. Their deceit had been exposed, their reputations irrevocably damaged by their own actions. The event was a triumph, not just for our family's business, but for me personally. I had faced the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger, my spirit unbroken. Nathan and Eve's shadows no longer loomed over me. I had stepped into the light, my future bright with promise and possibility. As the community rallied around me, offering congratulations and support, I realized that this was just the beginning. My journey from the depths of despair to the heights of redemption was a testament to the power of resilience and the unbreakable bonds of family. Nathan and Eve had sought to destroy me, but in their malice, they had only forged a stronger, more determined Julia Wells. And as I looked toward the future, I knew there was nothing I couldn't overcome. In the aftermath of the community event, the winds of change began to blow through my life with a newfound intensity. The support of the community had not only bolstered my spirits, but had also painted a target on Nathan and Eve's backs. Their attempts to navigate the social circles they once dominated were met with cold shoulders and disdainful whispers. My story, rooted in truth and resilience, had reshaped the narrative, casting them in the stark light of reality. As the divorce proceedings advanced, I was summoned to a mediation session, a final attempt to resolve matters without further court intervention. The prospect of facing Nathan and Eve, not just as the wronged party, but as an empowered woman reclaiming her narrative, filled me with a sense of grim satisfaction. The mediation room was sterile, the air thick with tension. Nathan sat across from me, his usual arrogance replaced by a sullen resignation. Eve was not present, a fact that spoke volumes about the fractures in their facade. "Nathan, we're here to finalize the terms of the divorce. It's clear that the marriage cannot be salvaged," the mediator began, her voice neutral yet firm. Nathan's gaze met mine, a flicker of something. Regret, perhaps, or merely the realization of his impending downfall, crossed his face. "Julia, I know I messed up. I never meant for things to go this far," he stammered, his voice lacking its usual confidence. The words meant to elicit sympathy only fueled my resolve. "Messed up? You betrayed our vows, Nathan. This goes beyond a simple mistake. You made your choices, and now you must live with the consequences," I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. The mediator interjected, let's focus on the division of assets and any financial settlements. Julia, your lawyer has presented a compelling case for substantial compensation considering Nathan's infidelity and the impact on your life. Nathan bristled at the mention of compensation. This is extortion. I admit I made mistakes, but to ruin me financially. Ruin you? I cut in, my patience wearing thin. You ruined our marriage, Nathan. Whatever financial consequences you face are the result of your own actions. Actions that have consequences. It's time you learn that. The mediator, sensing the futility of further discussion, moved to finalize the paperwork. The settlement was in my favor, a testament to the strength of my case and the evidence of Nathan's wrongdoing. As we left the mediation room, Nathan paused, turning to me with a look of desperation. Julia, please, can't we just put this behind us? For the sake of what we had? What we had. The words were a knife to my heart, a reminder of the love I once felt, now tarnished by betrayal. What we had died the moment you chose Eve over our marriage. Goodbye, Nathan. With those final words, I walked away, leaving Nathan and the wreckage of our marriage behind. The legal battle was over, but the fight to rebuild my life was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, my focus turned to the workshop and the burgeoning success of our family business. The community's support had translated into increased interest in sales, a silver lining in the dark cloud of the past months. Yet, as the business thrived, I couldn't shake the feeling of unfinished business. Nathan and Eve's social and professional downfall was a form of justice, but it was the inner work, the healing and rebuilding of my own life, that required my attention. I poured my energy into the workshop, finding solace in the creation of beautiful things. Each piece I crafted was a step towards healing, a tangible representation of my journey from betrayal to strength. The community event, once a platform for my public vindication, became an annual tradition, a celebration of resilience and the enduring spirit of our town. My story, once a tale of pain and betrayal, had transformed into a narrative of empowerment and renewal. Nathan and Eve faded into the background, their attempts to reclaim their former lives thwarted by their own actions. The community, once deceived by their facade, now saw them for who they truly were. As for me, I emerged from the ordeal stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The betrayal that once threatened to break me had instead forged a new path, one where I stood tall, unafraid, and ready to face whatever the future held. The seasons changed, as did the narrative of my life. The community event had not only become a cornerstone for our family business, but also a testament to the enduring strength of character over the deceit and betrayal that Nathan and Eve had sown. As the workshop flourished, so did my resolve to move past the shadows of my former life. Yet, the true test of my newfound strength was just on the horizon. A year had passed since the divorce was finalized when a twist of fate brought Nathan and Eve back into my orbit. The local news carried stories of a scandal involving a significant business in town, ensnared in deceit and fraudulent activities. At the heart of the scandal were Nathan and Eve, their actions finally catching up to them in a very public downfall. The community's reaction was swift and unforgiving. Nathan and Eve, once fixtures of the social scene, found themselves ostracized, their reputations in tatters. It was during this time that Eve reached out to me, a desperate attempt to salvage what little she could from the ruins of their actions. Julia, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm begging you to listen. Eve's voice trembled over the phone, a stark contrast to the confident woman who had once stood by Nathan's side. Eve, you're right. You have no right. After everything you and Nathan did, why should I listen to anything you have to say? My voice was cold, the bitterness of the past still lingering. I understand your anger, Julia, but it's Nathan. He's in trouble, serious trouble. The business scandal has ruined him, and he's not handling it well. Eve pleaded, desperation coloring her every word. The news of Nathan's downfall, though expected, brought no joy. The man I had once loved, now a shadow of his former self, was a stark reminder of the consequences of one's actions. Eve, Nathan's troubles are his own making. You both made your choices, and now you must live with them. My life has moved on, and I suggest you do the same, I replied, the finality in my voice leaving no room for further discussion. The call ended, but the news of Nathan's scandal lingered. a topic of hushed conversations and whispered speculations in the community. Yet, amidst the schadenfreude, a sense of closure enveloped me. Nathan and Eve's public downfall was the retribution their actions had wrought, a karmic justice for the pain they had caused. In the wake of their scandal, I found myself reflecting on the journey I had undertaken. From the depths of betrayal to the heights of personal and professional success, my path had been fraught with challenges. Yet each obstacle had only served to strengthen my resolve, to forge me into a woman who faced adversity with grace and determination. The workshop, once a refuge from my pain, had become a beacon of my resilience. The pieces we created, each imbued with the essence of our family's legacy, were more than just objects of beauty. They were symbols of a life reclaimed from the ashes of betrayal. As the scandal surrounding Nathan and Eve faded into the background, my focus remained on the future. The support of the community, once a lifeline in my darkest moments, had become a foundation upon which I built my new life. My story, once marred by the actions of others, was now solely my own, a narrative of triumph over adversity. Nathan and Eve's downfall, while a fitting end to their tale of deceit, was merely a footnote in mine. My journey had taught me that true strength lies not in the vengeance we seek, but in the resilience we demonstrate in the face of life's inevitable trials. As I stood in the workshop, surrounded by the fruits of our labor, I realized that the greatest retribution was not the downfall of those who had wronged me, but the life I had built in spite of them. My legacy would not be defined by Nathan and Eve's betrayal, but by the strength, love, and integrity that had seen me through the storm. And so, with my head held high and my heart at peace, I looked toward the future, ready to embrace whatever it held, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same strength and resilience that had brought me this far. Nathan and Eve's chapter in my life was closed, but mine was still being written, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, to overcome, to heal, and to thrive. I stared at the small, crumpled envelope in my hand, disbelief etching every line of my face. My niece, Emma, had innocently handed it to me, saying it was from Grandma. Why the secrecy? I glanced at the clock. It was almost time for Emma to leave. "Thanks, sweetie," I said, tucking the envelope into my pocket as I heard my sister's car pull up outside. After a warm goodbye, I closed the door, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. My name is Avery Sullivan. At 35, I had carved out a respectable career in marketing, leading a team in a bustling firm downtown. Life, for the most part, seemed comfortably predictable. That is until Nolan, my husband of 6 years, began acting oddly. Returning to the living room, I settled on the couch, the envelope now burning a hole in my pocket. With a deep breath, I tore it open. The words scrawled across the paper were simple, yet earth-shattering. "Avery, watch Nolan closely. Things aren't as they seem." I frowned. Nolan, my carefree, often irresponsible husband, had his quirks, but what did Mom mean? Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a disaster either. Since meeting Nolan at a mutual friend's gallery opening, life had been a whirlwind. His spontaneity was infectious, his disregard for convention charming in its own way. We married within a year, a decision that felt right at the time. But now doubt crept in, fueled by Mom's cryptic warning. The past few months had seen Nolan more secretive, his phone always on silent, his late-night work sessions more frequent. I had attributed it to his job at the tech startup, but Mom's note made me question everything. I decided to confront him. As I stood, a key turned in the lock, and Nolan entered, his face tired but smiling. "Hey, Avery, sorry I'm late. Got caught up at work," he said, shrugging off his coat. I watched him, a storm of emotions brewing inside me. The perfect opportunity to address my growing suspicions had just walked through the door. "Nolan, we need to talk," I began, my voice steady but tinged with an edge. He looked up, surprised. "Sure, what's up?" "It's about us, about your recent behavior." "I'm worried," I said, clutching the now crumpled envelope. Nolan's expression shifted, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place crossing his face. "Avery, His words trailed off as his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a visible tension settling over him. "I need to take this. We'll talk later, okay?" I nodded, frustration simmering. As he stepped into the other room, I realized the confrontation would have to wait. But then, A sharp pain shot through my chest. Nolan collapsed, clutching his left arm, his face contorted in agony. "Nolan," I rushed to him, my heart pounding. In that moment, all anger and suspicion evaporated, replaced by sheer panic. As I dialed 911, my mind raced. What was happening? Was this related to the secrets he was keeping? The questions swirled, but one thing was clear. Nolan's life hung in the balance, and with it the truth I was desperate to uncover. As the ambulance siren faded into the distance, I sat alone in the quiet room. The envelope lay forgotten on the floor, its message a haunting echo of the chaos that had just unfolded. The hospital's sterile walls did nothing to ease the turmoil churning inside me. Nolan lay in his bed, a maze of tubes and monitors surrounding him. The doctor had said it was a mild heart attack, but he was stable. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived, overshadowed by the growing web of suspicion. As Nolan slept, I couldn't help but replay our last conversation. The phone call, his sudden collapse, it felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. Over the next few days, I decided to dig deeper. Nolan's phone, usually guarded like a treasure, lay unattended on the nightstand. My hands trembled as I picked it up, the password screen glaring at me. I tried his birthday, nothing. Then, on a hunch, I typed in our anniversary date. It clicked open. The texts were damning. Flirtatious exchanges, plans to meet, all with someone named Clara. My heart pounded as I scrolled through message after message, each word a dagger. I confronted Nolan the next day. His initial shock quickly turned to defensiveness. "Avery, it's not what you think," he stammered, trying to sit up. "Not what I think. Nolan, you're having an affair." My voice cracked, anger and hurt warring within me. He sighed, his eyes avoiding mine. "It was a mistake, Avery. I never meant to hurt you." "Mistake? How long has this been going on?" I demanded, fighting back tears. "A few months," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. I stood there, reeling from his confession. The lies, the deceit, it was overwhelming. I needed air, space to think. Without another word, I left the room, Nolan's pleas fading behind me. The next few days were a blur. The evidence was undeniable, but I struggled with what to do. Our marriage, once a source of joy, now felt like a sham. As I sat in the hospital cafeteria, my phone buzzed. It was my sister. "How's Nolan?" she asked, concern lacing her voice. "He's stable," I replied, my voice hollow. "And you? You sound off." I hesitated, then the words tumbled out. "He's been having an affair, Jess, with someone named Clara." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Oh, Avery, I'm so sorry." I nodded, even though she couldn't see. "I don't know what to do. I feel so betrayed." "Avery, listen to me," Jess said firmly. "You need to think about yourself now. Nolan made his choice. It's time you made yours." Her words struck a chord. Jess was right. Nolan had made his choice, and now it was my turn. As I hung up, a new resolve settled within me. Nolan's deceit had shattered our marriage, but I wouldn't let it break me. It was time for retribution, time to make Nolan face the consequences of his actions. I returned to Nolan's room, my steps determined. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Avery, No, Nolan. It's my turn to speak. Your affair, your lies, it's over. We're over." His face crumpled, but I didn't waver. This was just the beginning. Nolan would soon learn the true cost of his betrayal. In the days following my declaration, Nolan's attempts at reconciliation became more desperate, but the trust was shattered. His words fell on deaf ears. I was determined to unearth the extent of his deception. I began by delving into our finances. Nolan had always been vague about money, but now every statement, every transaction held potential clues. The deeper I dug, the more alarming the revelations. Secret credit cards, unpaid bills, and a trail of expenses that led straight to Clara. Nolan's hospital stay extended due to complications, giving me more time to investigate. Clara, it turned out, was the daughter of a local pharmacist known in our community. The brazenness of it all left me reeling. They hadn't just crossed paths, they had woven a web of lies right under my nose. One evening, as I sifted through bank statements, my phone rang. It was Nolan's doctor, asking me to come to the hospital immediately. "It's urgent," he said, his tone grave. Rushing to the hospital, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, but nothing could have prepared me for what awaited. Nolan was conscious, looking more haggard than ever. But it was the doctor's words that echoed in my ears. "Mrs. Sullivan, your husband's condition is more serious than we thought. He's had a secondary complication. which has resulted in partial paralysis. Paralysis. The word hung in the air, heavy and ominous. I stared at Nolan, searching for any sign of deceit. But his eyes, usually so full of cunning, now reflected fear and uncertainty. Nolan reached out with his functioning hand, his voice barely a whisper. "Avery, please." "I need you." I recoiled, the magnitude of his betrayal still fresh. "Need me? Like you needed Clara?" He flinched, the guilt written all over his face. "Avery, I made a mistake, but I'm paying for it, can't you see?" His plea was pathetic, a stark contrast to the confident, carefree man I had married. But there was no sympathy in me, only a burning desire for justice. "You made your bed, Nolan. Now lie in it," I said, my voice cold. As I turned to leave, Nolan's doctor pulled me aside. "Mrs. Sullivan, I understand this is difficult, but your husband requires care now more than ever." His words were a reminder of the complexity of my situation. Nolan, despite his faults, was now vulnerable, dependent. It was a cruel twist of fate, one that left me torn between my desire for revenge and a sense of duty. The drive home was a blur. My mind wrestled with the doctor's words and Nolan's newfound helplessness. It was a perverse form of karma, but it also opened a door. A door to a revenge that was subtle, yet powerful. I arrived home to an empty, silent house. The walls seemed to echo with the remnants of a life that once was. But within that silence, a plan began to form. Nolan's betrayal had cost him more than he realized. Now, it was time for him to understand the true price of his actions. A price that I would dictate, in a game where I held all the cards. The sterile smell of the hospital mingled with the scent of betrayal as I walked through its corridors. Nolan's condition had stabilized, but the paralysis remained. He looked up as I entered, a mix of hope and fear in his eyes. "Avery, I didn't expect you to come back," he murmured, his voice tinged with surprise. "I'm not here for pleasantries, Nolan. I'm here to settle things," I replied, my tone icy. Nolan attempted a weak smile, but it faltered. "I know I've messed up, but this paralysis, it's karma, isn't it?" "Karma? No, Nolan. This is just the beginning," I said, leaning in. "You've played your games, now it's my turn." His eyes widened, the realization of my intentions dawning on him. "Avery, what are you planning?" "That's for me to know, but trust me, you'll pay for every lie, every deceit." I could see the fear creeping into his eyes, a fear that gave me a sense of power, a taste of revenge. As I turned to leave, a woman entered the room. "Clara." She looked at me, her eyes betraying a flicker of guilt. "Clara, this is my wife, Avery," Nolan introduced us, his voice strained. "We've met," I said, my gaze fixed on Clara. "I know all about your little affair." Clara's face flushed, a mix of embarrassment and defiance. "Nolan and we didn't mean to hurt you." "Hurt me? Oh, you've done much more than that, and now you'll both see the consequences," I said, my voice steely. Nolan interjected. "Avery, please, let's talk about this." "There's nothing left to talk about," I replied. "You've made your bed, and now you'll lie in it, both of you." With that, I left them in the room, their stunned silence a satisfying conclusion to the encounter. The game had changed. Nolan and Clara were no longer the players. They were the pawns. As I walked away, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my sister Jess. "Avery, we need to talk. I've found out something about Nolan." Curiosity piqued. I quickened my pace. Jess had always been resourceful, and if she had uncovered something new, it could be another piece in my revenge plan. We met at a nearby cafe, the bustle around us a stark contrast to the tension between us. "What did you find out?" I asked, eager yet apprehensive. Jess leaned in, her voice low. "Nolan's accident wasn't just a coincidence. He was with Clara when it happened." The revelation hit me like a wave. The accident, the paralysis, it was all intertwined with his affair. "And there's more," Jess continued. "I've heard rumors that Nolan was planning to leave you, start a new life with Clara." Anger and betrayal churned within me, fueling my resolve. Nolan's deception ran deeper than I imagined. "Thank you, Jess," I said, my mind racing with possibilities. This changes everything. As I left the cafe, a plan formed in my mind. Nolan and Clara thought they could rewrite the narrative, but I was the author of this story, and I would ensure it had a fitting end. Back home, the silence was deafening. It gave me space to think, to plan. Nolan's betrayal, now interwoven with his paralysis, had complicated things, but it also gave me an unexpected edge. The next day, I visited Nolan again. This time my approach was different, more calculated. Nolan, I've been thinking, I started, feigning a tone of reconciliation. Maybe we can work things out, start afresh. He looked at me, hope flickering in his eyes. Really, Avery? I would love that. But first, I need honesty. Total honesty, I said firmly. Nolan nodded eagerly. Anything, Avery, I swear. I leaned in closer. Tell me about the accident, the whole truth. He hesitated, then began. Clara and I were driving back from a weekend away. I lost control of the car. That's how the accident happened. I kept my expression neutral, hiding the storm inside. And Clara? She was fine. Just some minor bruises, he replied, his voice faltering. I stood up, my resolve hardening. Thank you for being honest, Nolan. As I left the room, Nolan's eyes followed me, filled with a mix of relief and confusion. Back home, I started putting my plan into action. I hired a private investigator, tasking him with digging deeper into Nolan's affair and the accident. The truth was my weapon, and I intended to wield it with precision. A few days later, the investigator provided his report. It was worse than I thought. Not only had Nolan been with Clara during the accident, but he had also been planning to leave me, to start anew with her. Fueled by this newfound information, I visited Nolan again, this time with a purpose. Nolan, I know about your plans with Clara, I said, watching him closely. His face paled. Avery, it's not like that. Don't insult my intelligence, I snapped. You were planning to abandon me, to start a life with her. Nolan's eyes darted around the room, a trapped animal looking for escape. Avery, please let me explain. No more lies, Nolan. I've heard enough, I said, cutting him off. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to divorce, and you're going to agree to my terms. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He knew he was cornered. As for Clara, she'll learn the truth. All of it. Your deceit, your plans, everything. Nolan's face crumpled. You wouldn't. Watch me, I said, my voice cold as ice. I left him there, his pleas echoing behind me. The tables had turned. Nolan, once the manipulator, was now at my mercy, and I had no intention of letting him off easy. The game of deception he had played was over. Now it was time for retribution, and I was ready to claim my victory. The day I filed for divorce felt like stepping into a new era. Armed with the truth and a resolve of steel, I walked into Nolan's hospital room with the divorce papers. Nolan, these are the divorce papers, I announced, placing them on the bedside table. He looked at them, his face a mask of disbelief. You're serious about this? Deadly serious, I replied. You've played me for a fool long enough. Nolan's eyes searched mine, looking for a hint of mercy. Avery, can't we talk about this? Maybe go to counseling, try to... No, Nolan, there's nothing left to salvage? I cut him off. You've made your choices, and now you live with them. He sighed, a defeated man. What do you want, Avery? Everything, I said bluntly. The house, the savings, and no alimony for you. And Clara will know everything. His face crumbled. You'll ruin me. You did that yourself, I replied coldly. Nolan signed the papers, his hand trembling. It was a victory, but a hollow one. I had wanted justice, but standing there, watching the broken man before me, I felt no joy, only a deep sense of loss. As I turned to leave, Clara entered the room. Her eyes widened at the sight of the signed papers. What's this? She asked, confusion etching her features. Our divorce, I said, meeting her gaze. Nolan and I are done. He's all yours now. Clara looked from me to Nolan, her expression a mix of shock and realization. You're leaving Avery for me? Nolan remained silent, his eyes on the floor. Clara, you were the other woman, but now you're the only woman. Congratulations, I said, the words laced with bitterness. I walked out, leaving them to their new reality. It was a reality they had chosen, built on lies and deceit. They deserved each other. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. The divorce was quick, Nolan too defeated to fight. The house, the savings, they were all mine. But they felt empty. Remnants of a life I no longer wanted. I started over in a new apartment with a new job. It was hard, starting from scratch, but it was honest, and it was mine. Through mutual friends, I heard about Nolan and Clara. Their relationship, built on the ruins of my marriage, was rocky, fraught with mistrust and guilt. They were a constant reminder to each other of how they had hurt me, and it ate away at them. As for me, I found peace in my solitude. I had loved Nolan, but that love had been based on a lie. Now I was learning to love myself, to find happiness in my independence. I realized that revenge hadn't brought me joy, but it had brought me clarity. I was stronger now, wiser, and ready to face whatever life threw at me. Nolan and Clara had each other, but I had something far more valuable, my freedom and my dignity. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Months had passed since the divorce, and life had settled into a new rhythm. The wounds were healing, slowly but surely. I had learned to embrace the quiet, finding solace in the small joys of everyday life. One crisp autumn evening, as I sipped tea on my balcony, my phone rang. It was Jess. "Avery, have you heard about Nolan?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "No, what happened?" I replied, a flicker of curiosity igniting within me. "He's left town, moved away with Clara. Apparently, they're trying to start over somewhere new," Jess explained. I paused, processing the news. Nolan and Clara leaving town was the final chapter in our shared story. A story that had ended not with dramatic confrontations, but with quiet departures. "Do you feel okay about it?" Jess asked gently. I smiled, more to myself than to her. "I'm okay, Jess. More than okay. I've moved on." We chatted for a while longer before hanging up. I sat there, looking out at the city lights, reflecting on the journey I had been through. Nolan's betrayal had shattered my world, but it had also rebuilt me. Stronger, more resilient. I had sought revenge, but in the process, I had found something far more valuable, my sense of self. I realized that true victory wasn't in seeing Nolan and Clara's downfall. It was in my rise from the ashes of our broken marriage. It was in the life I had built for myself, one that was authentically mine. The next morning I walked to work, the city bustling around me. I felt a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. My past with Nolan was just that, the past, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. As I reached my office, my colleague, Mark, greeted me with a warm smile. "Morning, Avery. You look good today." "Thanks, Mark. It's a new day," I replied, returning his smile. And it truly was. A new day, a new chapter, one where I was the author writing my own story, one filled with hope, strength, and endless possibilities. I never thought I would hear those words from my own mother. "Get out! You're no daughter of mine!" Marlene's voice, usually so composed, now cracked with fury. Her face, a mask of rage, was inches from mine as she wielded a kitchen knife, its tip menacingly pointing at me. Standing there in the kitchen of the house I grew up in, I felt a mix of shock and disbelief. I had come to help, to support our family, but now I was being branded a leech, a burden. "Marlene, please put the knife down," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "You know I've been paying more than half of my salary to help with the expenses. That's $3,000 every month." But my words seemed to bounce off her, unheard. She continued her tirade, accusing me of freeloading and being ungrateful. I retreated a step, maintaining a cautious distance. The woman before me was not the mother I remembered from my childhood. She had transformed into someone unrecognizable, someone driven by anger and resentment. As she continued to rant, I couldn't help but think of my father, David. He was the reason I pursued a career in software development. My mind drifted to the times we spent together when I was a child. His face would light up whenever he talked about computers. "Look at this one, Elaine. It's amazing how technology evolves," he would say, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Those moments in the electronic stores, with him explaining the intricacies of the latest models, sparked my passion for technology. My career was a tribute to those memories, to the bond we shared. I had worked hard, earning a respectable position at a reputable tech company. My job allowed me to work remotely, which was why I moved back home when David's health took a turn for the worse. But now, faced with Marlene's unwarranted hostility, I wondered if I had made a mistake. The sound of Marlene slamming her hand on the countertop jolted me back to the present. "If I knew you'd become such a parasite, I would never have had you," she spat out. Her words stung, but I refused to let them break me. "I'm here for Dad, Marlene, not to argue with you," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. The situation was escalating beyond what I could have imagined. It was then that I heard the faint sound of a car pulling up in the driveway. David was home from his latest doctor's appointment. I rushed to open the front door, welcoming him and steering him away from the kitchen and Marlene's wrath. As I helped him settle down in the living room, I couldn't shake off the heaviness in my heart. The confrontation with Marlene had opened a chasm in our family, one that I wasn't sure could ever be bridged. I looked at my father, his face weary but smiling at me. In that moment, I knew I had to stay strong for him, regardless of the storm that was brewing in our once peaceful home. The hospital's sterile white walls felt cold and unwelcoming as I paced back and forth, waiting for news about David's condition. The call from Marlene had been abrupt and alarming. David's collapsed. We're at the hospital. When the doctor finally emerged, his face was somber. Your father had a stroke. We've managed to stabilize him, but he's not out of the woods yet. I felt a chill run down my spine. Can I see him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. In a moment, the doctor replied, but be prepared. He may have lasting effects from the stroke. As I entered the dimly lit room, I saw David lying there, frail and hooked to machines. His once strong and capable hands lay motionless by his side. I took his hand, tears welling up in my eyes. I'm here, Dad. You're going to be okay. His eyes fluttered open, and he managed a weak smile. Elaine, my girl, he murmured. I spent hours by his bedside, talking to him, reminiscing about our days exploring technology together. Every so often, Marlene would come in, her visits brief and her words few. How is he? She would ask, her tone devoid of warmth. He's fighting, Marlene. He needs us now more than ever, I would reply, hoping for some sign of compassion from her. But compassion was a language Marlene seemed to have forgotten. Instead, she was more concerned about the practicalities. What about his job? The bills? What are we going to do for money? She fretted. Her words stung. Was money all she could think about at a time like this? I bit back my frustration, focusing instead on David's needs. As days turned into weeks, it became clear that David's recovery would be a long road. The stroke had left him with limited mobility, and he struggled with simple tasks. The once vibrant man who taught me about the wonders of technology was now dependent on others for his most basic needs. During his hospitalization, I noticed Marlene's visits becoming even more infrequent and perfunctory. She seemed detached, more concerned with her own life than with David's well-being. I decided to confront her one evening. Marlene, Dad needs us. He needs your support, I said, my voice tinged with desperation. Marlene scoffed. I have my own life, Elaine. I can't be expected to drop everything. Besides, he's your father. It's your duty to take care of him. Her words cut deep, but I refused to let them deter me. He's your husband, Marlene. He needs both of us. But my pleas fell on deaf ears. Marlene was wrapped up in her own world, a world where her needs came first and everyone else's were secondary. As I left the hospital that evening, my resolve hardened. I would be there for David no matter what. Marlene's indifference only fueled my determination to ensure my father received the love and care he deserved. The days following David's return home were a whirlwind of adjustments and challenges. I had rearranged my life to accommodate my father's needs, balancing my demanding job with caregiving and household chores. One evening, as I prepared dinner after a long day of work, Marlene strolled into the kitchen. Make sure dinner is ready by 7, Elaine, and I want something nutritious, none of that bland stuff you've been making. Her words were like a slap in the face. Here I was, doing my best to manage everything, and all she could do was criticize. I'm doing the best I can, Marlene. I'm not just taking care of Dad, but the entire house, I snapped back, my patience wearing thin. Marlene let out a derisive laugh. You call this taking care? You're barely managing. I had to handle much more at your age, without complaining. I bit my tongue to keep from lashing out. Arguing with Marlene was futile. She had always been self-absorbed, but now her lack of empathy and appreciation was more glaring than ever. Later that night, I helped David with his exercises, a routine that had become our little ritual. You're doing great, Dad, I encouraged him as he struggled to move his arm. He smiled weakly. I'm sorry, Elaine. I never wanted to be a burden to you. You're not a burden, Dad. You're my father, and I love taking care of you, I reassured him, though the weight of my responsibilities was beginning to take its toll. The following morning, I found Marlene lounging in the living room, a magazine in hand. Elaine, when you finish with your work, could you clean up around here? It's getting rather dusty, she said, not even bothering to look up. I clenched my fists, frustration boiling inside me. Here I was, juggling work and caregiving, and Marlene couldn't even lift a finger to help. It was always about her comfort, her needs. That evening, as I lay in bed, exhausted and overwhelmed, I made a decision. I couldn't continue like this. Something had to change. The realization that I was alone in this battle weighed heavily on me, but I knew I had to be strong. For David's sake. Marlene's selfishness had reached a point where it was not just infuriating, but deeply hurtful. Her indifference to our struggles was a clear sign that she was no longer the mother I once knew. The bond that should have united us in caring for David had been shattered by her callousness. As the days passed, the tension in the house grew thicker. Marlene's demands became more frequent and unreasonable, while her contributions remained non-existent. The strain was becoming unbearable, and I knew I had to find a way out of this toxic environment, for both my father's and my own sanity. The discovery was accidental, yet it shattered any remaining illusions I had about Marlene. I was searching for an old photo album in my closet when I noticed the empty space where my collection of designer bags and accessories used to be. Confusion turned to horror as I realized they were all gone. Confronting Marlene was inevitable. "Did you go into my room and take my things?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Marlene, lounging on the sofa with a glass of wine, didn't even bother to look up. "Your room? This is my house, Elaine. I don't need your permission to enter any room." Her nonchalant dismissal of my privacy was infuriating, but what she said next was even worse. "You had some pretty good stuff there. Sold them off for a nice sum. You should be thanking me for making good use of them." I was speechless. The audacity of her actions was beyond belief. "You sold my belongings? Those were mine, Marlene. You had no right." Marlene scoffed, finally turning to face me. "Right? I'm your mother. I have every right. Besides, it's only fair since you're living here rent-free." Her twisted logic made my blood boil. "Living here to take care of Dad is not living rent-free, and what you did is theft, Marlene, plain and simple." But Marlene was unmoved. "Theft? Don't be dramatic, Elaine. I'm just taking what's owed to me. After all, I've been putting up with you and your father. That was the last straw." The woman in front of me was not the mother I grew up with. She was a stranger, consumed by selfishness and greed. Over the next few days, I struggled to come to terms with Marlene's betrayal. My sense of violation was profound. But more than that, it was the realization that she saw us not as family, but as assets to exploit. I began to plan our escape. David, despite his weakened state, was supportive. "We can't stay here, Elaine, not with her," he said one evening, his voice filled with sadness and resolve. The plan was simple, yet daunting. We would leave while Marlene was out, taking only what we needed. I found a small but comfortable apartment close to the hospital and arranged everything in secret. The day of our departure was tense. As the movers quietly packed our belongings, I watched the clock, praying that Marlene wouldn't return early. David sat in his wheelchair, a mix of apprehension and relief on his face. As we drove away from the house, I couldn't help but feel a pang of loss. This was the home where I had grown up, where I had so many memories with my father. But it was also the place where I had lost my mother. Not to death, but to something far worse: greed and indifference. In the rearview mirror, the house grew smaller and smaller, and with it, Marlene's hold on our lives. We were finally free, but the cost of that freedom was more than I had ever imagined. Our new apartment was modest, but filled with a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. As I unpacked our belongings, David watched, a look of contentment on his face. "It's good to be away from that house, Elaine. I haven't felt this relaxed in years." I smiled at him, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "Me too, Dad. We'll make new memories here, just the two of us." But our tranquility was short-lived. A few days after our move, I received a call from Marlene. Her voice was icy, laced with anger and disbelief. "Where are you? Why have you taken David? You can't just leave like that." I held the phone away from my ear, her shrill voice echoing in the quiet room. "You told me to leave, Marlene. So I did. Dad and I are safe and happy now." There was a pause on the other end. "You think you can just walk away, after everything I've done for you?" I clenched my jaw, fighting back the urge to yell. "Everything you've done? You mean selling my belongings? Neglecting Dad?" Her response was a venomous laugh. "Oh, please, you're just like your father, weak and pathetic. You'll come crawling back, you need me." But I was done being her victim. "No, Marlene, we don't need you. We never did." Hanging up, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Marlene had chosen her path, and now we were choosing ours. The following weeks were a time of healing and adjustment. David's health was slowly improving, and we settled into a comfortable routine. I found joy in the small things, cooking meals for us, watching movies together, and talking about everything and nothing. But our peace was once again shattered when I discovered Marlene had been spreading lies about us to our relatives and friends. She painted herself as the victim, abandoned by her ungrateful daughter and sick husband. I was furious. How dare she twist the truth to gain sympathy? It was time for Marlene to face the consequences of her actions. I contacted a lawyer, detailing the years of emotional and financial abuse we had endured. "We want to take legal action," I told him. "Marlene needs to be held accountable." The lawyer was sympathetic, but warned me that it would be a challenging case. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? It will be hard, especially on your father." I looked at David, who nodded resolutely. "We're sure. It's not just about us, it's about setting things right." As the legal battle began, I felt a sense of purpose. This was more than just revenge. It was about standing up to a bully, about reclaiming our dignity. Marlene fought back fiercely, her true nature revealing itself in court. Her lies and manipulations were laid bare for all to see. The process was grueling, but with each passing day I felt stronger, more empowered. Finally, the verdict was in our favor. Marlene was ordered to pay restitution for the items she had sold and for the emotional distress she had caused. Leaving the courthouse, David squeezed my hand. "You did it, Elaine. You stood up to her." I smiled, tears of relief and triumph in my eyes. "We did it, Dad. Together." The legal victory over Marlene was more than just a win in court. It was a reclaiming of our lives and dignity. Yet, as we settled into our new normal, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of unease. One afternoon, a few weeks after the trial, my phone buzzed with a message that made my heart sink. It was from a cousin, informing me that Marlene had been spreading vicious rumors about me in the family, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who had manipulated her poor, sick father to steal his money and abandon her. Fury and disbelief churned inside me. How could she continue her deceitful ways even after everything that had happened? I realized then that Marlene would never change. She was a toxin that needed to be completely removed from our lives. I decided to confront her. Arriving at what used to be our family home, I was greeted by the sight of Marlene, who looked surprised and slightly apprehensive. "Elaine, what are you doing here?" she asked, a false note of concern in her voice. "I'm here to put an end to your lies, Marlene. You've lost in court, and yet you continue to spread falsehoods about me and Dad. Why can't you just leave us in peace?" Marlene's expression hardened. "Peace? You've taken everything from Elaine, my husband, my home, my reputation. You think I'll just sit back and accept that?" "I haven't taken anything that wasn't already destroyed by your own actions," I shot back. "You've pushed everyone away with your selfishness and greed." Marlene stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You think you've won, don't you? But I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about you. I'll ruin you, just like you've ruined me." I stood my ground, my resolve unwavering. "No, Marlene, you're the one who's ruined, and I won't let you drag us down any longer." Turning on my heel, I left her standing on the doorstep, her angry shouts fading behind me. I knew that our battle was far from over, but I was ready to fight for our newfound freedom and peace. In the following days, I worked with our lawyer to file a restraining order against Marlene. It was a drastic step, but necessary to protect ourselves from her relentless harassment and defamation. The day the restraining order was granted felt like a second victory. Marlene was legally bound to stay away from us, to cease her poisonous campaign against us. It was a relief, but also a sad confirmation that the woman who had once been my mother was now nothing more than a bitter stranger. David and I could finally breathe a little easier, knowing that Marlene's ability to harm us was significantly curtailed. We focused on rebuilding our lives, on healing from the years of emotional turmoil. As I watched David one evening, laughing at a comedy show on TV, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had weathered the storm together, and though the scars remained, we were stronger for it. Marlene's reign of terror was over, and we were free to live our lives without her shadow looming over us. Months had passed since the restraining order against Marlene was put in place, and life had gradually settled into a new rhythm. The apartment felt like a true home, filled with laughter and memories in the making. David's health was stable, and though the past still cast a shadow, we were moving forward. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, the phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello?" "Catherine, it's me," came Marlene's voice, unmistakable and unwelcome. My heart sank. "Marlene, you know you shouldn't be calling. There's a restraining order." I know, but listen to me," she pleaded. "I need your help. I'm in trouble." Her words were laced with desperation, a stark contrast to her usual haughty tone. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, despite myself. "I'm broke, Elaine. I've lost everything. I need money. You owe me that much." I felt a mix of anger and pity. Marlene, once so proud and manipulative, was now reduced to begging. "I don't owe you anything, Marlene. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." There was a pause, and then her voice came through again, softer this time. "Please, Elaine, I'm your mother. Don't you have any compassion?" The word compassion coming from her was almost laughable. "Compassion? After everything you've done? You've never shown any compassion to Dad or me. You only care about yourself." "Elaine, please," she started, but I cut her off. "No, Marlene. It's over. You need to take responsibility for your actions. Goodbye." I hung up, my hand trembling slightly. The finality of that call was both liberating and heartbreaking. Marlene had chosen her path, and it had led her to this. I turned back to the stove, the sizzle of the cooking food grounding me. David wheeled himself into the kitchen, a concerned look on his face. "Was that Marlene?" I nodded. "Yes, but it's handled. She won't bother us again." David reached out, placing a hand on mine. "You're a strong woman, Elaine. I'm proud of you." I squeezed his hand, smiling. I had a good teacher. In the days that followed, I reflected on our journey. We had faced betrayal and heartache, but we had also found strength and resilience. Marlene's absence in our lives was a void, but it was a void filled with peace. As I watched the sunset from our balcony, with David beside me, I felt a sense of closure. Our story had been one of struggle, but also of triumph. We had overcome the darkness, and now the future was ours to shape. "Here's to new beginnings." "Dad," I said, raising a glass of lemonade. "To new beginnings," he echoed, clinking his glass against mine. And in that moment I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together as a family. I remember the exact moment my world shattered. It was a Tuesday afternoon, ordinary in every sense, until Ethan, my 10-year-old son, dropped the bombshell. "Mom, I locked the basement door," he said, his voice innocent, unaware of the chaos he had just unleashed. My heart skipped a beat. The basement, Nathan's sanctuary, the place he retreated to every evening, claiming he needed time for his woodworking projects. But today, he wasn't alone. Today, my sister Rachel, the golden child in our family, the one who could do no wrong, was with him. They thought they were clever, sneaking around while I was supposed to be out with Ethan. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. My name is Claire Montgomery. At 32, I thought I had my life figured out. A stable marriage to Nathan, my college sweetheart, a beautiful home in the suburbs, and our son, Ethan. I had always wanted a bigger family, but life and my relationship with Rachel had made me reconsider. Growing up, it was always Rachel this, Rachel that. Our parents doted on her, ignoring my achievements, my struggles. I never wanted Ethan to feel that kind of neglect, that sting of favoritism. As I stood there processing Ethan's words, a storm brewed inside me. Rage, betrayal, disbelief, they swirled in my head, each emotion more overpowering than the last. Nathan and Rachel? It was like a sick joke, a plot twist in a trashy novel. I needed to see it for myself. I needed to confront them. But as I moved towards the basement door, I stopped. No, they didn't deserve the satisfaction of seeing me break. They didn't deserve my tears, my anger. In that moment, a cold, hard resolve settled over me. Let them stay there, locked in their den of deceit. Let them wonder, panic even, when I didn't come to their rescue. Ethan's voice snapped me out of my reverie. "Mom, are you okay?" I forced a smile, my heart aching for my innocent child, caught in the middle of this sordid affair. "Yes, honey. I just remembered we have that picnic today, remember? Just the two of us." His face lit up and guilt gnawed at me. I was about to drag my child into my plan for revenge, but it was too late to turn back now. "Let's get going," I said, my voice steady. As we drove away from the house, I couldn't help but glance at the rearview mirror, half expecting Nathan or Rachel to come running out, calling for us to stop. But there was nothing. Just the quiet suburban street, basking in the afternoon sun, oblivious to the drama unfolding in my home. The picnic was a blur. Ethan chattered about school, his friends, the new video game he wanted. I nodded and smiled, but my thoughts were elsewhere, on the betrayal that had uprooted my life. As we laid out our spread on the grassy field, Ethan's laughter ringing in my ears, a part of me wondered if I was doing the right thing. But then I remembered their laughter, their whispers, the way they thought they could make a fool out of me. No, this was just the beginning. Rachel and Nathan had crossed a line, and there was no going back. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I made a silent vow. I would make them pay. They would regret the day they underestimated Claire Montgomery. The next morning dawned with an air of pretense, as if the sun itself was trying to brush off the darkness of the previous night. I had barely slept, my mind replaying the scenario over and over again. Nathan and Rachel, locked in the basement, the secret they thought they had so cleverly hidden now laid bare. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls from Nathan. I watched it ring, feeling a twisted satisfaction in ignoring his desperate attempts to reach me. Let him stew in his guilt and fear. Ethan, oblivious to the storm brewing, munched on his cereal. "Is Dad still in the basement? He sure loves that place," he remarked innocently. I forced a smile, hiding the turmoil inside. "Yes, he's very busy with his projects," I lied smoothly. As Ethan left for school, I braced myself for what was to come. The confrontation was inevitable, but first, I needed answers. I needed to know how deep this betrayal ran. I dialed Rachel. She picked up on the first ring, her voice laced with panic. "Claire, oh my God, you won't believe what happened. Nathan and I got locked in the basement. It was so scary." Her feigned innocence fueled my anger. "Really, Rachel? How terrifying for you," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She hesitated, sensing my mood. "Claire, I can explain. It's not what you think." "Oh, I think it's exactly what I think. How long, Rachel? How long have you been sneaking around with my husband?" There was silence on the other end. Then a soft sob. "It just happened, Claire. It wasn't planned, I swear." I laughed bitterly. "Just happened? You expect me to believe that?" "I'm not a fool, Rachel," she cried, now her sobs loud and unconvincing. "Please, Claire, you have to believe me. It was a mistake." "A mistake? No, Rachel. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk at the store. This is a choice to betray your own sister. I hope he was worth it." I hung up before she could reply, her sobs still echoing in my ear. I felt a rush of power, of control. For once, I was not the overlooked sister, the one left in the shadows. I was the one calling the shots. But my triumph was short-lived. The reality of what had happened, of what I had lost, began to sink in. Nathan and I had built a life together, a family, and now it was all crumbling down, like a house of cards in a gust of wind. I looked around the house, at the photos on the walls, the memories we had created. They now felt like a mockery, a cruel joke. I had been living a lie, and the truth was a bitter pill to swallow. But swallow it I must. There was no going back now. Nathan and Rachel had made their choice, and I had made mine. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with pain and uncertainty. But one thing was certain. I would not be the victim in this sordid tale. I would write my own ending, and it would be one of triumph, not defeat. As I gathered the photos, tearing them from their frames, a plan began to form in my mind. Rachel and Nathan had taken everything from me. It was time to return the favor. The day unfolded with a deceptive calm, the normalcy of my routine clashing with the turmoil within. But beneath the surface, my mind was a whirlwind of plotting and planning. Today was the day I'd set my revenge in motion. I had arranged for Ethan to spend the weekend at a friend's house. He deserved a break from the tense atmosphere at home, and I needed space to enact my plan without his innocent eyes watching. I called Tyler, Rachel's son from her first marriage, and invited him over. Tyler, a quiet 15-year-old, had always been close to Ethan, more like a brother than a cousin. There was a maturity in him, a certain depth that came from dealing with Rachel's antics all his life. "Hey, Aunt Claire," Tyler greeted me. a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Is everything okay?" I sighed. "Tyler, I need to talk to you. It's about your mom and Nathan." His expression hardened slightly. "I'm not surprised," he said, a note of bitterness creeping into his voice. "Mom's always been like this." I was taken aback by his candidness. "You know?" He nodded. "I've seen her do this before, with my stepdad. She thinks nobody knows, but I've seen enough." His words confirmed my worst fears, and I felt a wave of sympathy for the boy. "I'm planning something, Tyler. A picnic this weekend. I need your help." Tyler's eyes narrowed, understanding dawning. "You want to leave them alone at the house," he surmised. "Yes," I admitted. "I want them to be exposed for everyone to see them for who they really are." "I'm in," Tyler said without hesitation. His loyalty to me over his own mother was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. The weekend arrived, and everything was set. The picnic was a ruse, a way to get everyone out of the house except Nathan and Rachel. I made sure they knew about it, dropping hints about how I'd be out the whole day, the house empty. As we left for the picnic, I saw Rachel's car pull into the driveway. My heart raced with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. This was it, the point of no return. Tyler was unusually quiet during the drive. As we set up our picnic spot, I noticed him staring into the distance, lost in thought. "You okay, Tyler?" I asked gently. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. I can't believe she's doing this again. To you, Aunt Claire." I reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this." He shook his head. "I'm not sorry. I'm glad I can help expose her. Maybe then she'll realize." His voice trailed off, but I understood. Tyler, like me, was seeking closure, a way to deal with the betrayal that had upended our lives. As the day wore on, I found myself checking my phone constantly, waiting for the call or message that would signal the unraveling of Nathan and Rachel's deceit. But nothing came. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows on the ground, Tyler spoke up. "Do you think it worked?" I nodded, a grim sense of satisfaction settling in. "Oh, it worked. Tomorrow, their little secret won't be so secret anymore." And with that, we packed up, leaving the serenity of the picnic spot behind. I was ready to face the consequences of my actions, ready to watch as the lives of those who had wronged me came crashing down. The following morning, I woke up to a sense of eerie calmness, the kind that often precedes a storm. Today was the day everything would come to light. Today, Nathan and Rachel's deceit would be exposed for all to see. I drove back home, my heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. As I approached the house, I saw Rachel's car still parked in the driveway. A sly smile crept across my face. They had taken the bait. I entered the house, the silence greeting me like an old friend. No sign of Nathan or Rachel upstairs. I made my way to the basement door, my steps deliberate. The moment of truth was upon us. As I opened the door, the scene that unfolded before me was more satisfying than I had dared to hope. There they were, Rachel and Nathan, disheveled and frantic, realizing their secret rendezvous had turned into a humiliating trap. "Claire!" Rachel exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and fear. "Oh my God, we were locked in here. It was an accident." Nathan stood there, silent, his eyes avoiding mine. The guilt was written all over his face, confirming what I already knew. "An accident? Really, Rachel? You expect me to believe that?" I sneered, my voice dripping with contempt. Nathan finally spoke, his voice weak. "Claire, I'm so sorry. It's not what you think." I laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Not what I think. I think it's exactly what it looks like. My husband and my sister betraying me in my own home." Rachel stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Claire, please, you have to understand. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness." "A moment of weakness?" I echoed, my anger boiling over. "No, Rachel, this was a choice to betray your own family." Nathan reached out, attempting to touch my arm. I recoiled as if his touch burned. "Don't you dare," I hissed. "You've lost the right to touch me, to even speak to me." I could see the shame in his eyes, the realization of what he had lost dawning on him. But it was too late. The damage was done. "Get out," I said, my voice cold and steady. "Get out of my house, out of my life. I never want to see either of you again." Rachel sobbed, her cries echoing in the empty basement. "Claire, please, I'm your sister." "You were my sister," I corrected her, my voice void of any warmth. "Not anymore." With that, I turned and left them there, their pleas and apologies fading into the background. I had done it. I had exposed their betrayal, and in doing so I had reclaimed my power, my dignity. But as I closed the door behind me, a wave of sadness washed over me. My marriage, my family, the life I had built, it was all in ruins. And yet there was a strange sense of freedom in that destruction, a chance to start anew, to build a life that was truly mine. As I sat in my living room, the silence no longer felt oppressive. It felt like a blank canvas, waiting for me to paint my new beginning. The aftermath of the confrontation left a bitter taste in my mouth. As much as I yearned for justice and retribution, nothing prepared me for the hollow victory that followed. My home, once a haven of love and warmth, now felt like a barren wasteland tainted with betrayal. I was in the midst of packing Nathan's belongings when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I answered, "Hello? Mrs. Montgomery? This is Officer Daniels from the local police department. We've received a complaint about a domestic disturbance at your address. Is everything all right?" My heart skipped a beat. So it had come to this. Nathan or Rachel must have reached out to the authorities. I composed myself. "Yes, everything is fine now. There was a misunderstanding, but it's been resolved." "Are you sure, ma'am? We can have officers come by to ensure your safety." "No, that won't be necessary. Thank you, officer." I hung up, my mind racing. This was far from over. The scandal of our family drama was now a matter of public record. I wasn't surprised when the gossip started. Whispers at the grocery store, pointed looks from neighbors. The once friendly community had its claws out, ready to pounce on the latest piece of juicy news. But I refused to be cowed. I walked with my head held high, refusing to give in to the shame that others expected me to feel. I was the victim, but I refused to play that role in their sordid drama. The real blow came a few days later. Tyler came to visit, his face etched with worry. "Aunt Claire, I heard my mom and Nathan are spreading rumors about you, saying you locked them in the basement out of jealousy." Anger flared within me. Jealousy? They have the audacity to twist the story? Tyler nodded, his eyes filled with anger. "They're playing the victims, saying you've gone crazy with jealousy and paranoia." I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Let them talk. I know the truth, and so do you. Their lies will catch up to them." But as days turned into weeks, the weight of the scandal began to take its toll. Friends distanced themselves, and even some family members questioned my actions. The isolation was suffocating, a constant reminder of the price of my revenge. In a desperate bid for some semblance of normalcy, I reached out to a divorce attorney. It was time to sever all legal ties with Nathan and reclaim my life. The attorney, a sharp-witted woman named Miss Harper, listened to my story with a mix of sympathy and professional detachment. "Mrs. Montgomery, while I understand your need for a quick resolution, I must warn you, this will be a messy divorce, especially with the allegations flying around. Are you prepared for that?" I nodded, determination stealing my resolve. "I want to move on, Miss Harper. I want to close this chapter of my life for good." As I left her office, a plan began to form in my mind. Nathan and Rachel wanted to paint me as the villain? Fine. I would give them a performance they'd never forget. I would emerge from this scandal not as a broken, scorned wife, but as a woman reborn, stronger and more resilient than ever. The days leading up to the divorce proceedings were like navigating through a minefield. Every step I took was met with criticism and judgment from those around me. But I was resolute. I refused to let Nathan and Rachel's deceit destroy me. The day of the first hearing arrived. Dressed in my best suit, I walked into the courtroom, my head held high. Nathan was already there, looking haggard and remorseful. Rachel wasn't present, but her absence did nothing to quell the sense of betrayal that simmered within me. "Mrs. Montgomery," my lawyer, Miss Harper, whispered as we took our seats. "Remember, stay calm and collected. Let him dig his own grave." Nathan's lawyer was the first to speak, painting Nathan as a victim of my supposed irrational jealousy. Mrs. Montgomery's actions were driven by unfounded suspicions and jealousy. Locking my client in a basement is not only unlawful, but also speaks to her unstable state of mind. I felt my blood boil, but I remembered Miss Harper's words. I remained silent, letting them spin their tale. Then it was our turn. Miss Harper was methodical, her words sharp and precise. My client acted out of self-defense. The evidence of Mr. Montgomery's infidelity is clear. and Mrs. Montgomery's actions, while extreme, were a result of emotional distress caused by this betrayal. The judge listened intently, his expression unreadable. After what seemed like hours, he finally spoke. Given the circumstances, I believe a fair settlement is in order. Mrs. Montgomery will have full custody of their son, Ethan, and Mr. Montgomery will provide alimony and child support. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Nathan's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of anger and regret. "Claire, please," he began, but I cut him off. "There's nothing left to say, Nathan. You made your choice." As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt the weight of the past few months start to lift. But the battle wasn't over yet. The social fallout from the scandal continued to plague me. Friends I once considered close turned their backs, siding with Nathan and Rachel's twisted narrative. I found solace in Tyler, who had become a frequent visitor. He, too, was struggling with the backlash, especially from Rachel's side of the family. "They're calling you a monster," Tyler said one evening, anger lacing his voice. "But they don't know the truth. They don't know her like we do." I sighed, feeling a kinship with Tyler that went beyond family ties. "Let them talk, Tyler. We know the truth, and that's all that matters." But even with the legal battle won, a sense of unease lingered. Rachel was still out there, spinning her web of lies, and I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. I needed to be vigilant, ready for whatever she had planned. As I lay in bed that night, I realized that this was far from over. The divorce was just the first step in reclaiming my life. But to truly move on, I needed to face Rachel and put an end to her manipulative games once and for all. The final chapter of my marital saga began on a crisp autumn morning. The leaves had turned a fiery orange, mirroring the burning resolve within me to confront Rachel and end this once and for all. I had arranged to meet her at a local cafe, a neutral ground where we could talk without the shadows of the past looming over us. As I waited, my mind raced with the possible outcomes of this confrontation. Rachel arrived, her demeanor a mixture of defiance and nervousness. "So you wanted to see me?" she began, her voice laced with a feigned casualness. I looked her straight in the eyes, my gaze steady. "Yes, Rachel, it's time we put an end to this," she scoffed. "Put an end? Claire, you've ruined everything. Your paranoia, your crazy accusations." I felt a surge of anger but quickly quelled it. "No, Rachel, you ruined everything. Your selfishness, your betrayal. You destroyed our family for your own desires." Rachel's facade cracked, her eyes flashing with anger. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Always playing the victim. But you're not innocent in all this. You pushed Nathan away, and I was there for him." I shook my head in disbelief. "You call sleeping with my husband being there for him? You're delusional, Rachel." The conversation escalated, each word we exchanged sharper than the last. But as the argument wore on, I felt a strange sense of detachment. This was no longer about winning an argument or proving a point. This was about closure. Finally, I leaned back, my decision clear in my mind. "You know what, Rachel? I'm done. I'm done letting you and Nathan dictate my life. I'm moving on, and I suggest you do the same." Rachel's face twisted into a sneer. "Move on? After everything you've done?" "Yes, move on," I affirmed. "I've been granted full custody of Ethan, and Nathan is providing alimony and child support. The divorce is final. It's over, Rachel." She was visibly shaken, her bravado crumbling. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you can just walk away from this?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Yes, I'm walking away. From you, from Nathan, from this entire mess. I'm starting fresh, for Ethan and for myself." Rachel watched me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. But I didn't linger on her expression. I walked out of the cafe, leaving her in the past behind. In the weeks that followed, I found a new sense of peace. I focused on rebuilding my life, on being there for Ethan, who had been my rock through this entire ordeal. We moved to a new neighborhood, a fresh start away from the judging eyes and whispered rumors. I landed a new job, found new friends, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. The scars of the past would always be there, but they no longer defined me. As I watched Ethan play in our new backyard, laughter filling the air, I realized that this was what mattered. This was my new beginning. My chance to write a new story, one where I was no longer a victim, but a survivor, a woman reborn from the ashes of her past. and as the sun set casting a warm glow over our new home, I knew that, despite everything, I had emerged stronger, ready to face whatever life had in store for me. "I'm not your ATM, Vanessa. This has to stop!" The confrontation erupted in our once peaceful living room. I, Jenna, stood defiantly before my mother-in-law, Vanessa, and my husband, Ethan. Vanessa lounged on the couch, her face a twisted mixture of surprise and contempt, while Ethan lingered awkwardly, his expression blank. "This is my son's house, Jenna. I'll spend as I please," Vanessa snapped back, her voice cold and dismissive. It felt like a bad dream. Ethan and I had begun our journey together, filled with dreams and love, but those days were now just a distant echo. The man I had married, once so loving and understanding, had transformed into someone unrecognizable, parroting his mother's harsh words and ignoring my pleas. "Ethan, you see this, right? You understand how wrong this is?" I implored, turning to my husband, desperate for an ally. But Ethan just shrugged, his eyes void of the connection we once shared. "Jenna, she's my mother. What do you expect me to do?" he uttered, his voice empty of the affection that once comforted me. Realization washed over me like a cold shower. I was alone in this battle. To them, I was merely a means to an end, a dispensable part of their twisted family dynamic. I knew I had to break free. "All right," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'll leave. And Ethan, we're done. I want a divorce." The room fell into a tense silence, the gravity of my words settling like dust. Ethan's face registered shock, a fleeting glimpse of the man I once fell in love with, but it quickly faded, replaced by an emotionless mask. "Fine, Jenna, what you need to, but don't think you're walking away with anything," he responded, his tone icy. I walked to the door, each step lighter than the last, leaving behind the oppressive weight of this house. Vanessa's voice, laced with malice, trailed after me. "Goodbye, Jenna. We'll be just fine without your drama." I didn't glance back. Exiting that house marked the end of a painful chapter and the beginning of an uncertain yet liberating journey. The cool evening breeze felt like freedom, washing over me with promises of a new beginning. I had no clear plan for what lay ahead, but I was certain of one thing. I would never allow myself to be diminished or disrespected again. This was the start of my story, on my own terms. Walking away from Ethan and Vanessa, my mind involuntarily drifted back to the beginnings of our story, contrasting sharply with the bitter end. I first met Ethan at work, where his charm and wit quickly captivated me. Our office romance blossomed into a deep connection, or so I thought. We shared dreams of a future together, dreams that now lay shattered at my feet. Our courtship was a whirlwind of affection and promises. Ethan often spoke of his difficult upbringing, raised solely by Vanessa after his father's departure. I saw a vulnerability in him that resonated with me, as I too had faced my share of hardships. But the Ethan I knew then was not the man I had just left behind. The first warning sign came the day I met Vanessa. Her demeanor was cold, her words sharp. "Ethan could do better," she had said, scrutinizing me with a judgmental gaze. Ethan, instead of defending me, chuckled nervously and changed the subject. I brushed it off, attributing it to first meeting nerves. How wrong I was. Our wedding plans were modest, but Ethan's excitement was palpable. He wanted a big celebration, to make up for the lackluster moments of his childhood. I admired his desire to turn past pains into joyful memories. But as the wedding drew closer, our differences became more pronounced. I had risen to a managerial position at work, a fact that Ethan initially celebrated. But soon his support turned to envy. Conversations about my work achievements became strained, and Ethan's demeanor grew cold. He started suggesting I should leave my job to focus on our home life, echoing Vanessa's archaic views on marriage. Then came the ultimatum. "You need to choose, Jenna. Your career or our family," Ethan said one evening, his tone unyielding. "But why can't I have both? Why does it have to be a choice?" I responded, bewildered by his demand. Vanessa, who had increasingly become a permanent fixture in our home, chimed in. "A woman's place is in the home, Jenna. You're neglecting your duties as a wife." Their words stung like a slap. I realized then that their vision of our future was vastly different from mine. They wanted a version of me that fit their narrow expectations, a version I could never be. The final straw was Ethan's announcement of Vanessa moving in with us permanently. a decision made without my consent, a blatant disregard for our partnership. I felt like a stranger in my own home, my opinions and feelings irrelevant. As these memories flooded back, anger and hurt surged within me. How could I have been so blind? How could I have ignored the glaring signs of Ethan's inability to stand up to Vanessa? I was nothing more than a means to an end for them, a convenient addition to their twisted family dynamic. But no more. The Jenna that walked away from that house was not the same one who entered it. I was stronger now, wiser, and fueled by a desire for retribution. Ethan and Vanessa would soon learn that their actions had consequences they could never have anticipated. I was determined to make them pay for every tear, every moment of self-doubt they had caused me. My journey of revenge had just begun. The days following my departure from Ethan and Vanessa's grip were a blur of emotions. As I navigated my newfound freedom, the memory of Vanessa moving into our home replayed in my mind, marking the beginning of my unraveling. It was a sunny afternoon when Ethan casually mentioned his mother would be staying with us for a while. The news caught me off guard, but I tried to remain understanding. Vanessa had always been a looming presence in our marriage, but living with her was a challenge I hadn't anticipated. From the day she arrived, Vanessa made it clear that she considered the house her domain. This place could use a woman's touch, and clearly, you're not up to the task, Jenna, she remarked on her first day, eyeing the decor disdainfully. Her criticism wasn't limited to the house. She found fault in everything I did, from my cooking to the way I dressed. Ethan, how do you tolerate such bland meals, she would say, scrunching her nose at the dinners I prepared. Ethan, instead of defending me, would nod in agreement, his silence a dagger to my heart. Her extravagant spending was the most egregious. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and lavish parties became the norm. She used the money I earned as though it were hers by right. A little luxury never hurt anyone, Jenna. You should try it sometime. Maybe then you'd understand. Vanessa sneered one evening, flaunting her new diamond necklace. I tried discussing this with Ethan, but he dismissed my concerns. Mom's had a tough life, Jenna. She deserves to enjoy herself, he said, ignoring the financial strain her indulgences put on us. The situation reached a boiling point when Vanessa decided to renovate the kitchen without consulting me. It's just so outdated, Jenna. We need a space more fitting for our lifestyle, she declared, as contractors roamed our home estimating costs. But this is our home, not just yours. You can't just make these decisions without talking to us. I protested, my frustration boiling over. Vanessa laughed, a cold, harsh sound that echoed in the hollow space that used to be my sanctuary. Oh, Jenna, when will you learn? This is my son's house, and what I say goes. You're just living here. Ethan's response, or lack thereof, shattered any remaining illusions I had about our relationship. He stood by, a passive observer, as his mother bulldozed over my feelings and our shared life. That night, lying in bed, I realized the full extent of their betrayal. They didn't see me as a partner or even a person. I was just a convenient accessory in their lives, easily discarded and replaced. But I refused to be a victim any longer. As Vanessa's words echoed in my head, a plan began to form. They thought they could control me, use me for their own gain, but they were gravely mistaken. I would take back control, reclaim my life, and in doing so, I would ensure that Vanessa and Ethan felt the sting of their actions, a sting that would leave a lasting mark. My revenge would be meticulous, calculated, and, most importantly, deserved. They had underestimated me for the last time. The weeks that followed were a crescendo of tension and silent battles. Living under the same roof with Ethan and Vanessa, I felt like a stranger in a home that once held the promise of love and companionship. But the true tipping point came unexpectedly, on a day that should have been about celebration, my birthday. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to an empty house. There were no signs of celebration, not even a note. I tried to brush off the disappointment, reminding myself that expecting anything from Ethan and Vanessa was futile. The day dragged on with an eerie quietness until the evening when even Ethan and Vanessa returned, bubbling with excitement. "We have great news." "Jenna!" Ethan exclaimed as they barged in, ignoring my evident dejection. Vanessa's eyes sparkled with a malicious glee. "We're going on a trip, a week in the Bahamas. Just think of the sun, the beaches, the luxury." I stood there, dumbfounded. You're going on a trip? On my birthday? You didn't even remember. Ethan waved off my shock. Oh, is it today? Well, happy birthday then. But listen, this trip is going to be amazing. Mom and I have been planning it for weeks. Vanessa chimed in, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. Oh, Jenna, don't be so childish. Birthdays are just another day. Besides, you should be happy for us. We deserve this break. Their blatant disregard for me, on what should have been a special day, was the final straw. Anger bubbled inside me, a fiery blend of betrayal and hurt. You're using my money for this trip, aren't you? The money I work hard for. Ethan shrugged, a dismissive gesture that ignited my fury. Well, someone has to pay for it, and since you're the only one working. Vanessa laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. Honestly, Jenna, you should be grateful. We're spending your money on something worthwhile. It's not like you have any better use for it. Their words hit me like a physical blow. The audacity to use my hard-earned money for their frivolous pleasures while disregarding my feelings was appalling. I realized then that I was nothing more than a financial resource to them, a means to fund their lavish desires. I can't believe this. You two are unbelievable, I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. Calm down, Jenna. It's just money, and it's not like you're doing anything important with it, Ethan said, his tone patronizing. Vanessa smirked, adding insult to injury. Exactly. Be a good wife and support your husband and his mother. That's your role, after all. Their words echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of how little they valued me. But their smug faces, their condescending tones ignited something within me. A resolve, a burning desire for retribution. This is it. I'm done. I refuse to be your personal ATM, your doormat. You'll regret treating me this way, I vowed, my voice steady with newfound determination. Ethan and Vanessa exchanged amused glances, clearly underestimating the depth of my resolve. But I knew, at that moment, that my journey of revenge had truly begun. They had pushed me to my limits, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. In the days following my decision, I moved into a modest hotel, a temporary sanctuary as I plotted my next steps. The betrayal by Ethan and Vanessa had left a bitter taste, but it also fueled a fire within me, a desire to reclaim my life and exact revenge. I began by consulting a lawyer, meticulously laying out the years of financial exploitation and emotional abuse. The lawyer listened intently, occasionally nodding, his expression a mix of disbelief and sympathy. We have a strong case here, Jenna. It's clear that you've been taken advantage of. Let's start with filing for divorce and freezing the joint accounts, he suggested. With each step, I felt a piece of my old self return, the Jenna who was confident, who wouldn't let anyone walk over her. I was no longer the woman who tolerated disrespect and manipulation. A few weeks into my hotel stay, my phone rang. It was Ethan, his voice laced with panic. Jenna, where are you? The bank accounts are frozen, and we can't access any funds. I couldn't help but smile, a cold, satisfying grin. Oh, Ethan, I'm taking back what's mine. You and your mother can't use me as your personal cash machine anymore. There was a pause, and then Ethan's voice grew desperate. Jenna, please, you're overreacting. Let's talk about this. We're a family, after all. Family. The word echoed mockingly in my ears. No, Ethan, we were never a family. You chose your mother over your wife, and now you must face the consequences. As I ended the call, a sense of empowerment washed over me. This was just the beginning. Vanessa and Ethan had underestimated me for far too long. They thought they could control and use me, but I was about to show them just how wrong they were. The next phase of my plan involved exposing their true characters. I reached out to mutual friends and colleagues, sharing my story. The reactions were a mix of shock and support. I always knew Vanessa was difficult, but I had no idea it was this bad, a former colleague said, her voice filled with indignation. Word spread, and soon Ethan and Vanessa's social standing began to crumble. Invitations dwindled, and their once bustling social life faltered. I watched from the sidelines, a bittersweet satisfaction in seeing them isolated, a taste of their own medicine. But the true revenge was yet to come. I had one last card to play, one that would ensure Ethan and Vanessa would never forget the price of their actions. The final move was a legal stroke of genius. Through my lawyer, I initiated a case to claim back the funds Vanessa had squandered. The evidence was overwhelming, and the law was on my side. The day we received the court's decision in my favor was the day I truly felt vindicated. Ethan's pleas for forgiveness and Vanessa's attempts to negotiate fell on deaf ears. They had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. The financial strain was just a start. I wanted them to feel the same helplessness and despair they had subjected me to. As I prepared to leave the hotel and start anew, I knew that the path ahead would be challenging. But I also knew that I was no longer the same woman who walked into this situation. I was stronger, wiser, and most importantly, free. The day of reckoning had arrived. After weeks of meticulous planning and legal maneuvering, I was ready to confront Ethan and Vanessa directly. I had arranged a meeting under the guise of discussing the divorce and settlement. As I entered the cafe where we agreed to meet, I saw them sitting there, a picture of anxiety. Vanessa's face, usually so composed, was etched with worry. Ethan looked up as I approached, his eyes searching for a sign of leniency. "Jenna, thank you for agreeing to meet," Ethan started, his voice unsteady. "Look, I know things got out of hand, but we're family. Can't we just put this behind us and start over?" I couldn't help but scoff at his audacity. "Start over? After everything you and your mother have done? You must be joking." Vanessa interjected, her tone a mix of desperation and cunning. "Jenna, dear, let's be reasonable. We all made mistakes, but we can work this out. We're willing to make amends." Their pleas were a stark contrast to their earlier arrogance. It was satisfying to see them squirm, to witness the shift in power. Mistakes? You call years of manipulation and financial abuse a mistake? I retorted, my voice firm. You two have shown no remorse for your actions. Now, you will face the consequences. Ethan's face paled, a realization dawning on him. Jenna, please, we need the money, the lifestyle, the reputation. We can't lose everything. Vanessa, ever the manipulator, tried a different approach. Think about what's best for all of us, Jenna. We can still be a family. Isn't that worth more than revenge? But their words fell on deaf ears. I had seen their true colors, and there was no going back. This is no longer about money or reputation, I said, my resolve unwavering. It's about justice. You will both pay for what you've done. The court has ruled in my favor, and you will comply with its decision. The look of defeat on their faces was the vindication I had sought for so long. I stood up, ready to leave the past behind. This is where our paths diverge, Ethan and Vanessa. I hope the lessons you learn from this are profound and lasting. Goodbye. As I walked away, I didn't look back. I had turned the tables on them, reclaimed my dignity and independence. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. Ethan and Vanessa were now just a part of my past, a painful chapter that had come to a close. In the aftermath of my final encounter with Ethan and Vanessa, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The chapter of my life dominated by their deceit and manipulation was closed, but the journey ahead was mine to chart. The taste of victory was sweet, yet it bore the complexity of hard-earned lessons. I had moved into a new apartment, a space that was entirely my own. The walls were yet to be decorated, the rooms still echoed with the newness, but it was a sanctuary of peace and freedom. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my destiny. Word of Ethan and Vanessa's downfall spread quickly. Their once prestigious social circle had crumbled, leaving them isolated and disgraced. The lavish lifestyle they had so greedily pursued was now a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of their actions. But the true reward of my journey was not in their downfall. It was in the reclaiming of my identity and the rebuilding of my life. My career, which had once been a point of contention in our marriage, flourished. I was promoted, recognized for my resilience and dedication. Colleagues who had heard of my ordeal expressed admiration and support, further fueling my drive to succeed. I often found myself reflecting on the journey. The pain and betrayal had been real, but so was the strength I discovered within myself. I had faced my fears, stood up against injustice, and emerged victorious. The final twist of fate came unexpectedly one day. As I sipped coffee in a cafe, the same one where I had last seen Ethan and Vanessa, I overheard a conversation at the next table. It was about them. They were struggling, facing legal battles and financial ruin. Vanessa, once so proud and haughty, was now a shadow of her former self, humbled by the consequences of her greed and manipulation. As I listened, I felt no joy in their suffering. Instead, I felt a sense of closure. My revenge had been served, Justice had been meted out, but I no longer dwelled in the past. They were a chapter closed, a lesson learned. I finished my coffee and stepped out into the sunlight, feeling its warmth on my face. The world around me seemed brighter, filled with possibilities. I had survived the storm and was now basking in the calm that followed. As I walked down the street, I realized that my story was not defined by Ethan and Vanessa, nor by the pain they had caused. My story was about resilience, about rising from the ashes and forging a path of my own. I smiled, embracing the future with open arms. The road ahead was mine to travel, filled with hope, opportunities, and the promise of new beginnings.